to the table, and this is once again what he has done also for this one. It's going to be Terrapagos and Miraidon.
Yeah, and we saw that just a little bit in Regulation I. We did see the Electric Seed as the item choice on Terrapagos to allow it to be incredibly bulky, and then you pair it with something like the Sinister to be able to get that hospitality going, and then you get a Terrapagos that is pretty much un-KOable. A couple of shout-outs on in things that are slightly different from what we saw previously on this version of the team in the first round. You got the Smeargle, and that's going to be able to get the fake out and follow me pressure. Also decorating the Terrapagos potentially to allow it to do absolutely massive damage. And another thing that I've just spotted is there's the eject button on the Sinister. It was Focus Sash on the previous versions of this team, but that's obviously on the Smeargle. Eject button, a really cool item, so that when you get hit, where you switch in, get your hospitality, get hit, switch back out, so that you can switch back in and get an extra round of hospitality.
Yeah, absolutely crucial though. The Focus Sash, and a lot of these teams, they like to use Sinister also in matchups against Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is what we will see over on Sarah's side in a second. Because then actually Sinister, well, can be threatening with Shadow Ball, can threaten back some damage, and can also switch into Calyrex Shadow Rider a little bit more freely. So with the eject button, that's not going to be an option for David. The thing is, Sinister matches up really, really well into Zamazenta, but it's hard to kind of switch in between Incineroar and Sinister if there is a Astro Barrage, Body Press combination kind of pinning you down. So this is something that Sarah will have to deal with this team. You were saying it earlier, David kind of popularized with the Calyrex Shadow Rider choice specs, and then supported by Friend Guard Mousehold with the Feint, break through any Wide Guard, break through any Protect, and then you also got the Whimsicott for some further speed control there with Tailwind, but you could also use Roaring Moon for that very same move.
Yeah, I think the aim of this team, especially with the choice specs being the item of choice on the Shadow Rider Calyrex, is to just hit hard and get as many KOs as quickly as you can. And that can easily be done with a Terra Ghost and a choice specs and a Helping Hand. There's very few Pokemon, even the ones that would resist Astro Barrage, that is able to survive that attack. And then you've got some fantastic support around it. You've got the Follow Me from Mousehold and the Friend Guard keeping it safe. You've got two versions of the Tailwind, so that if you would have been attacking second, well, now you're probably going to be attacking first instead.
Yeah, what an exciting matchup to start off Prague here. Two Worlds level competitors, and let's see what they're bringing to the table here.
Yeah, it's going to be that Incineroar and Miraidon against the Whimsicott and the Calyrex. It seems like we have a very, very quick offensive lead coming up from Sarah, who does seem to be on this side. We've got the Whimsicott and Calyrex facing down the Miraidon and Incineroar, so do swap around what's on the field as we go into this match. The Miraidon is Choice Scarf, so you do need to be going for Tailwinds to be able to get that speed control going, and does have the Covert Cloak over the Focus Sash, so it would be able to completely freely get that up. However, the Calyrex has to contend with this Incineroar. It could very easily knock it out with those Dark-type attacks.
Yeah, so the Miraidon not wanting to take any chances there, as there is a potential for a Tailwind, and a big attack coming in is going to be that Terrapagos. Because one thing we didn't really talk about too much, I mean, not only does David have one type, one normal type there, he has two. So with that, you can just switch in Terrapagos, take a potential Astro Barrage really, really nicely, but Sarah is seeing through that play easily, bringing in the Landorus instead.
Yeah, and we are now back to the right way round, so we've got that Tailwind going, we got the knockoff, and that would have easily picked up the knockout on the opposing Shadow Rider, but getting rid of the Life Orb on the Landorus is still going to be incredibly useful, because that will reduce its damage output.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, with that, a little bit of a defensive capability there from Incineroar. Removing Life Orb, definitely helpful, and Terrapagos, of course, still has its ability intact, so is also going to take some reduced damage this turn. Sarah, though, with Landorus now on the field, no Fake Out as an option, and we already know there's Miraidon going to be in the back, so Incineroar could definitely be susceptible to a Ground-type move here this turn.
Yeah, and we're seeing a Terrestrialization coming out immediately on this turn, and it is the Incineroar. It's a very brave thing to do to Terrestrialize not your Terrapagos, because then that is no longer an option, and you usually want to be able to go for those spread-type attacks, but David prioritizing keeping that Incineroar safe from those ground-type attacks. The Whimsicott going for that taunt, trying to stop any of the Calm Mines that have been coming out from the Terrapagos. Sandsear Storm was clicked, and I was expecting a miss there, but of course that pause was the Terra Shell activating on the Terrapagos instead. You can see how little little damage it is taking, and that defensive bug terrestrialization, keeping that Incineroar incredibly safe as well. No Calm Mind, it's going straight on the offense with that Terra Starstorm, doing some very respectable damage into the Landorus, and a Terra-boosted U-turn coming out from the Incineroar, also doing some very respectable damage into that opposing Whimsicott.
Yeah, good damage on the board there for David, but he invested quite a bit there. Terrapagos won't be able to terrestrialize, so will not be able to go for those spread type Terra Starstorm later down the game, and Landorus was able to make it through the turn. So if under Tailwind it is faster than this Choice Scarf Miraidon, there's still an opportunity to go for another powerful attack there. And as we see the Pokemon David has in the back, well, this is why he kind of had to go for this Terra Bug on Incineroar, because all Pokemon he had in the back were weak to ground-type moves. So amazingly done by Sarah, getting Landorus in the positioning there under Tailwind.
Yeah, I think the speed order between the Scarf Miraidon and the Landorus is going to be quite crucial on this turn. The Zamazenta is switching in for the Whimsicott, preserving the Tailwind potential in future turns, and it seems like David is not confident that even with the Choice Scarf he would outspeed the opposing Landorus, so is immediately switching out. No Volt Switch, just a hard switch into that opposing Incineroar, so that could easily take all of those ground-type attacks that could be coming out, which was targeted into that Miraidon. A nice and safe Earth Power, doing very little damage. And now the Terrapagos firing off once again, just that regular old Terra Starstorm, easily able to pick up that last little bit of HP on that Landorus.
Yeah, David showing that, well, you don't have to always go for the Terra on Terrapagos. Instead, with that Terra Bug at Incineroar, but now maybe Sarah can kind of capitalize on this positioning by bringing in Calyrex Shadow Rider. Well, Terrapagos being a normal type, usually you would use Terrestrialization to turn Terra Starstorm into a Stellar type move, which would allow it to hit Calyrex. But now, well, it's kind of awkward because neither of them can really hit the other really well. So while David could try and go for a fake out this turn on Zamazenta to maybe stop a body press coming out, it's hard to see how David can make any progress in terms of damage on this Calyrex Shadow Rider.
Yeah, well, speaking of damage, we're getting that Terra Ghost going on the Calyrex. It might just be a defensive terrestrialization so that by dropping its Psychic typing, it could be able to take a knockoff from the opposing Incineroar. Astral Barrage coming out, there was no fake out from the Incineroar, and since it dropped its Dark typing, it's going to be taking neutral damage from this.
Wow.
Incredibly strong Astral Barrage. Assault Vest does not matter. The Incineroar is dropping to such a strong spread type attack. And Zamazenta is completely free now to go on the offensive with that body press. And with the Electric Seed, the Terrapagos is able to survive that, so it is able to respond with an Earth Power, but it hasn't been boosted at all by any kind of Calm Mind, not even doing half damage to that Zamazenta.
Yeah, and Sarah here showing why this combination of Astral Barrage and Body Press can be so devastating, because, yeah, it just hits so well. And Incineroar forced to go for the Terra Bug earlier on in the match, and now Sarah capitalizing on this positioning, getting the KO on Incineroar. And now, well, there's a lot of pressure now on this Miraidon to get anything done. Yeah, I think you have to go for like an Electro Drift probably into this Calyrex. But we already know that there's still the potential of like a Whimsicott coming in, though not this turn.
Yeah, not this turn. We're just going on the offensive. There's no Tailwind. The Scarf allows the Miraidon to outspeed this Choice Specs Calyrex and do absolutely massive damage, but not enough damage. The Calyrex is able to survive in the red and is almost certainly going to be knocking out this Miraidon because it's got that Choice Specs, it's got the Terra boost, and it's even got a Grim Neigh boost from knocking out the Incineroar. So all of the multipliers coming out, and Miraidon is incredibly bulky, but not bulky enough. It is one-hit KO'd.
Wow, yeah, so powerful this Calyrex Shadow Rider, taking Electro Drift, getting the KO, just all the calculations falling into place for Sarah. And while Body Press still threatening that Terrapagos next turn, and now also the Electric Terrain is gone, so Raging Bolt gets to join the field now, finally confirmation, the fourth Pokemon of David, but it's, well, a little bit too late for kind of the positioning that it would have wanted to see with the Electric Terrain still being up. However, I mean, you still get to pressure a Thunderclap into Calyrex, so yeah, maybe you can still get something done with that Raging Bolt, but it's going to be really, really tough, I have to be honest.
Yeah, even if you Thunderclap the Calyrex, Zamazenta will just respond with a Body Press into the Terrapagos, and then we'll be able to take down the Raging Bolt with the Whimsicott. And David saw that and did throw in the towel, and Sarah is able to take this first game.
Wow, yeah. I mean, we were talking about this. Looking at the matchup on paper, it looks like, well, you have the Calyrex Shadow on the one side, and you have two normal types over on the other side. this seems like a really, really tough battle for Sarah. But she showed us how you can play this matchup, bring in Landorus, get it into a nice positioning, then force a defensive terrestrialization out of David. And then all of a sudden, it felt like things were falling apart pretty quickly, especially the turn where the boosted Choice Specs, boosted Astro Barrage, got the KO on Assault Vest Incineroar. And yeah, maybe David is now regretting a little bit putting that team out there all those months ago, because yeah, what does he even do in this positioning now?
I think what I'd like to see is the Electro Drift into the Zamazenta, because the Calyrex would have then been completely locked into Astro Barrage and can't hit the Terrapagos. And even though it was incredibly low, I don't think the Whimsicott Moonblast, because you don't invest anything in special attack on Whimsicott on Covert Cloak, I think the Terrapagos might have been able to survive, get a Terra Starstorm into the Whimsicott, get the KO, and then just the Terrapagos will do like maybe 8 Earth Powers into the Calyrex, but will eventually win because it can't be hit. So I think that might have been the way round. Because we would have had the Raging Bolts supporting the Terrapagos as well. You can go for something like Thunderclap and Terra Starstorm wins the Whimsicott. That should guarantee the KO, and then the Terrapagos eventually wins. So maybe just expecting the Electro Drift to KO the Calyrex and the training on that Shadow Rider, which you're allowed to do when you're Choice Specs, because you don't need to invest completely in your special attack because of that Choice Specs and all the multipliers. So maybe the Miraidon would have normally KO'd just a no-bulk Calyrex, and then the bulk that is potentially on Sarah's Calyrex saved it there.
Yeah, really interesting approach there, kind of locking the Calyrex Shadow Rider in place, locked into a Ghost-type move, and then kind of using Terrapagos to power through it. So yeah, let's see if that is what David can pull off here in the second game. Seems like both players are ready to switch things up.
Yeah, we got the Roaring Moon coming up for Sarah there as a different way of getting speed control, but Smeargle is paired up with the Terrapagos here. Very interesting switch up from both of these trainers. The Calyrex, it can't go for Astral Barrage at all. That's the attack that it wants to go for. But I'll say that, it can go for it. You really shouldn't go for it in the face of 2 normal types. So it's going to have to go for one of its single target options if it wants to stay in and go on the offensive this turn. It's almost certainly got to be that Psychic, which can easily break the Focus Sash of the Smeargle. And then are you just going to go for Fake Out into the Roaring Moon to stop any of the knockoffs that can be coming off? Because you probably do want to keep your Electric Seed ready for the Zamazenta in the future. But you could also just go for the Decorate into the Terrapagos, start doing some very, very good damage immediately.
Yeah, this could be a couple of turns here coming out from David where he's just looking for some opportunity to set up Calm Minds there. Going for the Fake Out and Calm Mind and Pollen Puff is actually the move of choice here for Sarah. Now, notably, this Smeargle does not have Spiky Shield. So next turn, now Sarah could go for a Breaking Swipe, go around the Follow Me and kind of break the Terra Shell on Terrapagos already. And then, well, Pollen Puff, though, we get the speed boost, however, Roaring Moon should still be faster here in this positioning. Yeah,
it is generally trained to still be faster than a +2 Smeargle. That's not what you train for, but it just happens to be most of the time. So it depends. If the Roaring Moon was run particularly bulky because it just gets the speed boost, it could be outsped here, but it should be able to get that Tailwind or the Breaking Swipe to be able to get that KO into the Smeargle, break the Terra Shell, as you mentioned. The Terrapagos now has got a Calm Mind, though, and now it's got that +1. It can start to do the respectable damage. We saw it not be able to do that damage in the previous game, but now it's going on that offensive with the Terrestrialization. It's going to be doing some very respectable damage here.
Yeah, so David is saying, well, okay, the first game, the Terra Bug on Incineroar, that was kind of cute, as Roaring Moon, as expected, is outspeeding. He's saying, well, that was kind of cute, but actually, you know what? I need to be able to hit this Calyrex Shadow Rider with my Terrapagos. So going for the Terra right away. Let's see how much damage this Terra Starstorm can do.
Yeah, it's going to be spread now, so it's going to be slightly reduced damage than the single target would have been, but it still adds that +1 thanks to the Calm Mind, and it should be able to do, I was going to say, about a 2-shot on both of these Pokemon.
Yeah, now Sarah has Tailwind set up. Presumably, the play I was thinking about with a Breaking Swipe, that could run into some problems if then Miraidon comes in with a Choice Scarf, and if that is trained to maybe outspeed the Roaring Moon. Also, that is one where you don't really know which of the two is going to be faster, since Miraidon also likes to go really, really bulky if it has the Choice Scarf, but Sarah didn't want to take any chances there. Going for the Tailwind right away, and now has speed control up. But David, now with this electric terrain that is being set up, also gets some boosts here on the Terrapagos. Maybe there was an opportunity to try and go for a knockoff at some point into this Terrapagos, but David managing his turns nicely. Now Terrapagos fully set up with the Calm Mind and the Electric Seed.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it was Pollen Puff over Psychic on the Calyrex. That is going to be doing a lot more damage than Pollen Puff because it being a Psychic type. So yes, you've been able to get a KO into the Smeargle and get a +1 on your Grimnay, so Pollen Puff will still do incredibly respectable damage, but Psychic would have done a bit more here, especially into either the Miraidon or the Raging Bolt that is immediately switching in. So the Miraidon here just activating that Electric Seed to be able to stop any of the knockoffs that will be coming out to get rid of that.
Yeah, really, really nice defensive synergy there between Raging Bolt and Miraidon. No, not really. They have the same type. But David does this just to preserve Miraidon and maybe to play around a potential knockoff play. But it is Breaking Swipe and Pollen Puff coming out from Sarah. And
oh, wow!
Oh, wow. Well, it's not a joke. This Pollen Puff hits hard.
Yeah, it's all about the multipliers here, the Joy Spect, and then the Grimnay. But granted, this Terra Starstorm is now surely going to be able to take care of both the Roaring Moon and the Calyrex based on the previous amount of damage it did. Yep, there's no rolls coming into play here. That is going to be a double KO. But yeah, I was saying, well, it should have been the Psychic to be able to get those KOs. No, just the Pollen Puff was enough to be able to knock out that Raging Bolt. Very, very impressive.
Yeah, very powerful play there indeed. But both players going down to their last remaining 2. And it's going to be Zamazenta and Landorus. And, well, Tailwind is still up for Sarah.
Yeah.
The Choice Scarf Miraidon may be fast, but you know what might just be a little bit faster? It's the Landorus.
Yeah, well, Landorus tends to be also run bulky in Regulation I. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Miraidon is able to outspeed with the Choice Scarf, but the most likely thing would be that the Landorus is still able to outspeed because of the doubling speed compared of the 50% boost of the Choice Scarf. And I think that could be the decider here, that Zamazenta can be two-shot very easily by an Earth Power from the Terapagos, and the Electric Seed should allow it to survive 2 of the body presses. The Zamazenta was always going to move first. Who's going to move first before Landorus or Miraidon?
It is Landorus Earth Power into Miraidon, and it is the one-hit knockout. David shaking his head there. Oh, with a critical hit. I don't know if that mattered. Maybe this is a really, really bulky Miraidon, but this KO opening the path for Sarah to win.
Yeah, we got this Earth Power, and it needs to knock out the Zamazenta in one hit, and it is not able to achieve that. The Zamazenta survives in the red. That will just be a body press and an Earth Power into the Terapagos. Even if the Terapagos was able to survive one of those other body presses, it would not be able to. David throws in the towel here, and Sarah is able to take down our previous Prague champion.
Yeah, what a great way to start off the day for us. What a great way for the viewers at home. What a great way for Sarah taking down the previous Prague champion. Of course, a very, very strong showing for Francesco. This team has also been able to have a very strong showing for him previously in the first round of Regulation I. Looks like it was the Ogre Pon that is overtaking the Iron Valiance that was previously on the team. I'm actually seeing a couple of changes that was a slightly different from his previous version. The Sinister had Protect in the previous round, but now it has Trick Room. The other 3 moves were the moves of choice that it had, and the Iron Tread is not Choice Band, it is Life Orb instead. That allows it to run Protect, and that's going to be able to keep it a little bit safer rather than just going for the full offense of the Choice Band.
Yeah, that flexibility in being able to switch out your moves is really, really useful, especially, say, if you're locked into Steel Roller, you get rid of the opposing terrain, and then it fails the next time because there's no terrain to get rid of. But now, because you've got Life Orb, you can actually switch up your moves. So I really like this adaptation from Francesco. But of course, his opponent, Javier, is not going to be making it easy for him to try and get that win. Javier, of course, running that Koraidon team. That's, you know, a little bit different, but still so much offensive pressure. That Calyrex Shadow Rider with the Life Orb as well. There's just so much damage options out there. And then Koraidon with the Clear Amulet, completely immune to Intimidates.
Yeah, and that is available on Francesco's side of the field, so they're going to be able to do all the damage that it needs to. The Calyrex and the Koraidon do very much seem like the centerpieces there with 4 supportive Pokemon. Yes, Fluttermane does a lot of damage itself, but Icy Wind is the main. Yeah, Terra Stella. We saw that in the finals of the World Championships, be able to put on such a showing. But yeah, we got the Fake Out available from Incineroar, the Icy Wind, Fluttermane. You got double redirection in the Ogerpon Cornerstone and the Brew Bonnets here. So yeah, it does seem like it's focus on the restricted. Protect the king and queen, as you were, in this kind of regulation. That is a very common strategy that people go for because the restricted are so strong. just support them. Get the restricteds to be able to get all the knockouts. You can easily achieve that when you've got that nasty plot going on the Calyrex. Even if you don't, the Life Orb allows it to do very, very good damage. And like you mentioned, the Clear Amulet on the Koraidon means its damage output cannot be stopped.
Yeah, just so much damage coming off from both of our trainers. This is going to be an absolutely electrifying match. Also, bit of a switch up between the two Ogerpons. One's a Wellspring form and one's a Cornerstone form. So that could be, you know, that bit of a difference and making sure which trainer gets the win. But oh my goodness, I am so excited to see what we are going to get. And I'm personally hoping to see an Iron Treads come out. That's going to be really exciting. It's one of my favorite Pokemon in this matchup. But now here we go, starting with round 3. Koraidon and Incineroar up against the Miraidon and the Terapagos. So Terapagos is going to get that defense boost immediately.
Yeah, it is. It's going to get the Electric Seed boost and allow it to shrug off the attacks from the Koraidon a lot more comfortably. We're seeing here that the Koraidon is activating its Orichalcum Pulse before the Miraidon is going for its Hadron Engine. So likely that the Koraidon is going to be the faster here. And you've got Fake Out pressure active as well. So you probably do need to go for the Fake Out into the Miraidon. Otherwise, you're forced into the Terastallization on the Koraidon to survive a potential Draco Meteor coming out. But then, if you go for the Terastallization in front of the Terapagos, well, now suddenly you're going to be taking super effective damage whenever it wants to launch off those Terra Stella boosted Terra Starstorms. You've got the Electric Seed available now. You can't be knocked off anymore, and you're going to be incredibly bulky with that boost. So even if the Miraidon gets faked out, the Terapagos is completely free this turn to be able to go for Calm Mind. If the Fake Out goes into the Terapagos to be able to stop that Calm Mind while also breaking the Terra Shell, then you have to contend with the fact that there could be a Draco Meteor coming out into this Koraidon.
And it looks like Javier is not going to want to risk and goes for the Fake Out onto the Miraidon, followed up with a Collision Course onto that Miraidon. But Miraidon, so bulky, is going to be able to survive that. Of course, it is going to flinch, but allows its teammate Terapagos to get a Calm Mind boost up. Now, the Calm Mind is not going to help defensively against these two physical attackers, but it will help in the future.
It definitely will, and I think that's very smart targeting from Javier there. You saw that the Koraidon was likely the faster against the Miraidon, and now it is in range of just another Collision Course, and the only real switch into that would be that Sinister that could be waiting in the back, which is entirely reasonable to be able to bring thanks to its Focus Sash against a Shadow Rider. That's still going to be able to keep it safe from that and allows it to come to this matchup. But the Terapagos, it can still have its Terra Shell broken from a U-turn. It's not Parting Shot, so there's benefits to both there. The U-turn's going to break the Terra Shell, but doesn't reduce the special attack from the Terapagos. So actually, now it's got that Calm Mind, it's going to be able to start doing very respectable damage.
Looks like the Koraidon's not going to take any risk. It's going to go for another Collision Course and knocks out this Miraidon before it has the chance to dish out any damage on the board, but does allow this Terapagos to get another attack off. And it's going to be just a normal Terra Starstorm onto the Koraidon. Deals very respectable damage, over half of its health. But it also looks like now the Incineroar going for the U-turn, just wanting to pivot itself out of there and break that Terra Shell from the Terapagos. So now it's going to be taking super effective damage from any future collision courses.
Yeah, and even with the Electric Seed, that's still going to be doing very, very good damage. Here's the Calyrex Shadow Rider joining the field as well, which won't be able to threaten the Terapagos as much. It's got that Calm Mind boost that's really going to help it. And the Calyrex hasn't been able to set up with a nasty plot yet. It might be afforded the opportunity to, depending on what is going to be brought in here for Francesco. We do get to see the sneak peek that is the Sinister waiting in the back with that Incineroar. Either of those would threaten that Shadow Rider with Shadow Ball or Knock Off respectively. If the Sinister's brought in, the Terra Shell's active once again. If the Incineroar's brought in, you got Fake Out pressure into the Koraidon. So either of these should be entirely reasonable. I think sacrificing the Miraidon, granted it's your restricted and you usually want to be able to keep them safe, I think that was probably the correct choice for Francesco here.
I think, look, from the looks of it in this game, Francesco is putting all of his eggs into the Terapagos basket and wanting to make sure that it is kept nice and safe. And now this Incineroar is coming in. It's going to be a very good Pokemon against the Calyrex Shadow Rider, but not so great against the Koraidon, which has a clear amulet and blocks that Intimidate.
And now we've got the potential of Fake Out into that Koraidon. You could have gone for Collision Course into either of these Pokemon here. And if the Terrapagos does go for that Terastallization, the sun disappears, and then Collision Course just really isn't doing as much damage as you would like it to. It should still be able to knock out the Incineroar, but the Electric Seed should allow the Terrapagos to be able to survive that pretty comfortably. It might just be a Protect coming out from the Koraidon here, just in case the Fake Out does go into it, and then the Terra Starstorm is able to hit it, because I think that's really the only way to break through this Terrapagos, unless you've got a few nasty plots up on the Calyrex, but will there be the opportunity to? Because the Terrapagos has already started to set up here. It should be able to go on the offensive.
Koraidon is going to retreat back to its Pokeball, not wanting to take any risks. And in comes this Incineroar, which is going to drop an Intimidate onto Francesco's Incineroar. But the Incineroar is actually a clear area, so it's going to ignore it. And it looks like we're going to get a Terastallization from this Terrapagos. It's going to wipe away the electric terrain and the sun. So now this Terrapagos is getting ready to rumble and dish out those very, very powerful +1 Terra Starstorms. We're going to see how much damage is this going to do. But first, all the terrains and all the weathers are going to be nullified from the field, and Calyrex just keeping itself nice and safe this turn, while the Incineroar from Javier's side absorbs a Fake Out. And here we're going to see how much damage does this +1 Terra Starstorm do to this Assault Vest Incineroar. And the answer is going to be not very much damage.
No, not much at all. Yes, it is +1 on the Terrapagos, but Assault Vest Incineroar is incredibly bulky. You probably do need a couple more Carmines to be able to threaten really good damage coming out here. Now that the Incineroar's joined the field for Javier's side of the field, you've got your Fake Out pressure back. Do you go for Fake Out into the Terrapagos to stop it from going for something like a Carmine to be able to do much more damage than that, because that was underwhelming? Or do you go for the Fake Out into the opposing Incineroar to stop the knockoff on the Calyrex? Because if you Fake Out the Terrapagos, knockoff could just be able to one-shot this opposing Calyrex, which means you might need to Terastallize, but again, makes you weak to the Terra Starstorms that could be coming out in the future. I think you do need a nasty plot, though, on the Calyrex. You can't go on the offensive here. Psychic is not going to be doing the damage you need to if it's got the Calm Mind. So yeah, Fake Out into the Incineroar to stop knockoff means you don't have to Terastallize, and now you can start setting up.
Calyrex plotting away there with that nasty plot, but allows the Terrapagos to get another powerful Terra Starstorm off. It's going to do not very much to the Incineroar. No, actually, quite underwhelming on the Calyrex too at the +1. So yeah, Incineroar will get knocked out in one more hit, but now there's a +2 Calyrex on the field.
Yeah, but that did, what, 49%? And the Calyrex is Life Orb, so if it does go on the offensive, it now puts itself in range of that boosted Terra Starstorm. So you got a little bit of a choice here for Javier. Do you go for the Psychic into the Terrapagos so that you can put it into almost certainly Collision Course range from the Koraidon that is now waiting in the back? Or do you go for the Astral Barrage into the Incineroar to start chipping away at that? I think the preference is surely got to be hitting the Terrapagos, because the Incineroar you can deal with at some point with your Koraidon as well, because you'll always be able to one-shot that with the Collision Course here. But not on this turn, especially so because it is going to be switching out. We're going to get that Sinister, and we're going to get that healing with the Hospitality.
Well, Sinister, such a good host, is going to make sure that its teammate Terrapagos is going to be healed up back to full with the Hospitality ability. But Calyrex actually wanting to keep itself safe this turn, doesn't want it to take any Life Orb recoil or any Terra Starstorms, and Javier is going to allow his Incineroar to go down, but this does mean that he gets a fresh Pokemon to bring in on this next turn. So Incineroar gets knocked out, and we're going to have to see whether or not Javier brings back his Koraidon or the yet unrevealed fourth Pokemon.
I think it probably has to be the unrevealed one. The Koraidon coming in here means it can just be redirected by the Rage Powder from the Sinister, and it's in range of another Terra Starstorm, so that would just be incredibly awkward. Like we said, the Koraidon is the Pokemon that needs to be... It's going to be the one that's joining the field here, though, so the Sinister should be able to keep that Terrapagos safe and just launch off one more Terra Starstorm, and if the Calyrex goes on the offensive, which it does need to do because it's got its Nasty Plot and wants to make use of it, then it's going to be able to be in range of that Terra Starstorm afterwards because of the Life Orb chip. So, yeah, this is a very, very awkward position for Javier. I'm a little bit surprised to see the Koraidon come in rather than the unrevealed Pokemon, because the Sinister kind of needs to be dealt with before the Koraidon has the potential to go for that Collision Course into the opposing Terrapagos. So I think that Francesco should be able to support around the Terrapagos here to allow it to reach its full potential and get those double knockouts.
Yeah, that Focus Sash on Sinister is going to be so useful in allowing it to survive an Astral Barrage. Barrage if Javier tries to knock it out with that super effective Astral Barrage. And now it looks like Koraidon's actually going to be recalled immediately. So Javier just wanting to set the sun up for that last Pokemon in the back, which is going to be the Ogerpon, and allows the Sinistcha to get that Rage Powder off. So drawing away any single damage attacks, and we're going to have to see what does this Calyrex go for. It looks like it's going to be an Astral Barrage that is going to be easily enough to knock down the Sinistcha to 1 HP and allow it to survive thanks to its Focus Sash. But Calyrex is now going to take a little bit of recoil, and that does allow the Terrapagos to be able to knock out this Calyrex with that Terra Starstorm. So here we go, Terra Starstorm breaking the sturdy on Ogerpon and knocking out the Calyrex.
Yeah, and that looks like it's going to be 2-shot on the Ogerpon as well. So if this Terrapagos is able to get off one more Terra Starstorm, that will be a double knockout, and that will be the first game for Francesco. I think the only thing that can really save Javier now is if he's trained his Ogerpon faster than the Koraidon, because now the Sinistcha can still keep the Terrapagos safe with the Rage Powder. If the Koraidon goes first, that gets redirected, and then Ogerpon is definitely not going to be strong enough, even with a critical hit through the Electric Seed, to be able to KO. But if the Ogerpon is faster, then that will knock out the Sinistcha first, and it's reasonable enough that Koraidon could be run incredibly bulky and the Ogerpon even stronger. But it seems like with this Terastallization, that surely indicates the Koraidon is faster, because Javier wants that extra damage coming out from the Terra Rock.
Yeah, look at that Ogerpon now going into his Terastallization. Sinistcha, of course, once again clicking Rage Powder. There's no reason to click any other move. So who's faster? It is the Koraidon. So Koraidon is going to knock out this Sinistcha, but more importantly, allow this Terrapagos to remain on the field one more time. So the Ogerpon is going to be faster than this Terrapagos. Is that going to be enough to knock out the Terrapagos, though? I'm not too sure it will be, unless it gets the critical hit. No critical hit. No. So here comes a super powerful Terra Starstorm onto this Koraidon and this Ogerpon Cornerstone, and that is easily going to be a double knockout. And Francesco is going to take game one with a very unnecessary critical hit over there.
Yeah, very, very nicely done from Francesco. The Terrapagos was absolutely the star of that show in that game one. Miraidon was essentially just sacrificed to get a +1 defense on the Terrapagos that it didn't even need, because it never got hit.
It got hit once.
It got hit
with a U-turn.
And just in the end game, that Ivy Cudgel. But the +1 wouldn't have made a difference. It would have been able to survive that very, very comfortably. Very, very nicely done from the Terrapagos. Miraidon could be a little bit reasonable in this matchup, but apparently is just there for the Electric Seed. Like we've said, on Javier's side of the field, the only real way to deal with the Terrapagos is that Koraidon. And it took that... I was going to say chip, it actually took like half damage from the attacks from that single target Terra Starstorm, which put it in range of the future ones. So Javier probably needs to keep the Koraidon a bit safer than that. Maybe go with the Calyrex in the lead and use the Calyrex to deal with the Miraidon. Because if you go for Fake Out into Miraidon and then Nasty Plot, I was going to say, it would normally be able to knock out a Miraidon, but this is the Assault Vest available on the Miraidon, so I wouldn't be surprised that with that item choice, that even a +2 boosted Calyrex would not be able to knock out that, and then it's able to respond with a Volt Switch or maybe even a Snarl as well. Just based on what we've seen so far, I think it is very, very awkward for Javier here.
Yeah, and I liked how you mentioned that the Miraidon, it didn't really get to do much besides get that defense boost on its own teammate Terrapagos. The one other thing I think Miraidon did very well is, one, discourage the Brute Bonnet from being brought into the game, and also it kind of was like a pseudo Rage Powder / Follow Me, in that it was so threatening that it forced Javier to target down the Miraidon and bought all of those turns for its teammate Terrapagos to start setting up with those Carmines. So yes, Miraidon didn't get to deal out any damage despite the fact that it's such a strong Pokemon, but it was there to just, be a little bit of a beacon to say, hey, look at me, I'm here, deal with me or you're going to get knocked out.
Yeah, well, like one of the strategies that trainers do go for when it is protect the king or queen on these strategies, and it seems like Terrapagos is very much the monarch here, is to just focus down on the other 3 Pokemon, and I will eventually just be able to focus fire with 2 of my Pokemon into your 1 remaining Pokemon. But Terrapagos is such a bulky Pokemon here, you have to commit a load of attacks into it to be able to deal with it, and it was able to respond with some very powerful Terra Starstorms. Even just +1 was able to knock out all 3 of the Pokemon on Javier's side of the field in 2 hits. And if you're only afforded 1 extra hit before you would then be knocked out on the next turn, that doesn't allow much breathing room for Javier at all.
Yeah, that was just really masterfully played from Francesco there, preserving all of his pieces and putting all of his eggs into that Terrapagos basket. We're going to have to see whether or not our players switch up their strategies a little in this game too. It looks like Javier is going to lead with the Incineroar and Koraidon. This time, same leads from Francesco with the Terrapagos and Miraidon.
Yeah, sticking with what worked for Francesco, and Javier still committing to Incineroar Koraidon. You still got Fake Out and Collision Course to put the Miraidon into Collision Course range again. But didn't seem to work out last time, allowing that Terrapagos to get that Calm Mind, which allowed it to do a load of damage to Javier's side of the field. Do you consider at this point go for Fake Out and Collision Course into the Terrapagos? Because the Terrapagos didn't protect in that game one. If you went for Fake Out and Collision Course, well then that would break the Terra Shell with the Fake Out, allowing the super effective Collision Course to hit into that Koraidon. So might be something to consider on Javier's side of the field. The Terrestrialization ended up coming on the cornerstone right at the end game and didn't matter at all. So it might be worth committing to your Terrestrialization on the Koraidon turn one, just so that you're sort of able to survive any Draco Meteors that come out, because Fake Out and Collision Course into the opposing Terrapagos, if it doesn't protect, actually might be able to put Javier on the offensive here and get some momentum going.
Yeah, same leads, but very, very different options for our trainers. And we're going to get an immediate turn one terrestrialization here. It is going to be onto the Koraidon. So this Koraidon now will be taking super effective damage from a potential terrestrialized Terra Starstorm, but also indicates maybe there's a Fake Out coming onto this Terrapagos as well. Francesco, of course, is going to be responding with his own terrestrialization onto this Terrapagos. So Terrapagos wiping away the sun and the electric terrain, which means actually the Koraidon's collision courses will be dealing less damage. And here we go. Here is the sun wiped away from the field and also the electric terrain. And now the Incineroar goes for the Fake Out. It is onto this Terrapagos. So Terrapagos will be flinching, but it has to eat a super effective collision course. How much damage does this do? It does quite a respectable amount of damage, but allows the Miraidon to go for the Draco Meteor, which misses the Koraidon. This poor Miraidon has not been able to deal out any damage so far in these two sets.
Yeah, that was definitely better for Javier, wasn't it? Being able to stop the Calm Mind coming out that could have come out from the Terrapagos. I think it did end up going on the offensive there, but the flinch able to put a stop to that. And yes, the sun has disappeared now, so the collision course isn't going to be doing as much damage, but we saw there, it's a two-shot. It's going to be able to knock out this Terrapagos if that is the target once again. And losing out on the damage from the Draco Meteor, that really, really could come into the play in future turns, because if the Draco would have connected with Koraidon, granted, the electric terrain was wiped away as well, so that wouldn't have been as strong. I reckon that was probably enough to put it in range of a +1 Terra Starstorm in the future, so that's really, really now put Francesco on the back foot.
Yeah, Francesco's in a bit of a sticky spot. Koraidon once again outspeeding all Pokemon on the field with a super effective collision course. It is easily enough to get the knockout onto this Terrapagos. So Terrapagos goes down without having really accomplished very much in this game, but does allow its teammate Miraidon now to get a Volt Switch off onto this Incineroar. And without the electric terrain, this Assault Vest Incineroar is able to sponge up that Volt Switch very, very nicely and allow Francesco to pivot in his own Incineroar. But now he does get a free switch into another Pokemon.
Yeah, and he will be afforded that even if he was going for the pivot, because it is U-turn available on the Assault Vest. Of course, you can't run Parting Shot, and it's going to be just knockoff instead, so getting rid of the Clear Amulet on the Incineroar. But I think the damage has probably already been done here. Francesco's barely been able to achieve anything. Granted, he's got the electric terrain back. I guess that's going to be helping out the Miraidon a little bit, because you saw the pitiful Volt Switch damage into that Assault Vest Incineroar. But the momentum is by far in Javier's favor. Just going for that very safe collision course once again to the Terrapagos. Francesco probably predicting Javier to predict the very obvious protects there, but no. Terrapagos, such a threat in that game one, already dealt with on this game two, and there's not really that much damage available on Francesco's side of the field. We've already had the sneak peek that Sinister is once again waiting in the back. That's not really going to be able to do the damage. The Incineroar can do okay damage as well. It's got to be the Miraidon that's going to be the damage dealer here, but we've already seen that it underspeeds the Koraidon. It'll underspeed the Calyrex waiting in the back as well. So if you get any kind of chip into that Miraidon and then you get a nasty plot on your Calyrex, I wouldn't be surprised if that would be then able to sweep through the team here.
Oh, looks like Koraidon's doing nothing but going for those collision courses, easily enough to get a knockout onto this Incineroar and forces Francesco down to his final two Pokemon. But first, Miraidon now goes for another Volt Switch once again into this Incineroar. Deals deals more damage, but you see just how strong an Assault Vest Incineroar is able to survive these really powerful attacks. Of course, Miraidon being Assault Vest isn't quite as offensive, and unfortunately Sin is just swapping in, is able to get the hospitality boost on his teammate and allows the Incineroar to also pivot out with a U-turn and allows Javier to bring out another Pokemon in the back. So a much better start for Javier this game.
Oh, considerably so. The game's already over. The sash is broken on the Sinister now, so the Koraidon can go for whichever fire move it wants. Maybe not the Flame Charge. It's not in the sun, so go for the Flare Blitz, get that guaranteed KO into the Sinister, and then this Miraidon will not be able to 1v4 here. Francesco's already realized and is locking in that forfeit. So yeah, a much, much stronger showing for Javier there, because Terapagos was such an issue in that game 1, and it was dealt with very, very nicely from Javier in that game 2.
Yeah, I really like the adjustments from Javier there, just prioritizing getting rid of that Terapagos immediately because it was such a problem. Now, I do have to wonder, in that turn 1 of game 2, the Miraidon did miss a Draco Meteor onto the Koraidon. Now, do you think that could have had a much bigger impact on the game? Could Francesco have, brought it back if he had managed to connect that Draco Meteor?
I don't think the Koraidon took any extra damage, and given that the terrain was wiped away from the Terapagos going for its terastallization, the Draco Meteor would not have been able to pick up the knockout thanks to the defensive terastallization into the fire type on Koraidon. So if the turn 2 would have happened exactly the same on Francesco's side of the field, then no, I don't think it would have mattered. But maybe that would have influenced him to potentially protect on the Terapagos, because then maybe a Protect and a second Draco Meteor or an Electro Drift now that's nice and consistent because it's a fire type, that might have been enough to be able to pick up the knockout. So yeah, given how the second turn went, no, it wouldn't, but maybe the turn 2 would have gone differently. But the fact that the Terapagos was 2-shot by the collision course, even out of the sun, that's really, really impactful. And I think the secondary effect of collision course coming into play there that no one ever thinks about, that it's stronger when it's super effective.
Yes, just such offensive options from both of our players. Now, you mentioned earlier, had Francesco protected, it could have been a very different game, but these are the mind games that our players, go up against when they're in the game. It looks like Javier's going to lead with the exact same Pokemon of Incineroar and Koraidon, and Francesco also leading with the exact same leads of Terapagos and Miraidon. So I think both of our players just realizing this is their best options, and just how they play out their turns is going to be the difference.
Well, this is going to be a very, very interesting final turn 1 in this game 3 here, because you were mentioning mind games. You've just seen that Fake Out with Miraidon and Collision Course the Miraidon didn't work out so well, but we've seen that Fake Out Terapagos and Collision Course the Terapagos worked out incredibly well. Does the Terapagos protect or not? I think that is going to be the huge momentum swing on either trainer's side of the field, depending on whether the Terapagos protects or whether the Fake Out goes into the Terapagos and the Miraidon. That's going to be the key thing. If the same thing happens in game 2, and the Terapagos is then put in range of a second collision course, momentum is by far on Javier's side of the field. However, if the Terapagos does protect, because that is a very strong move that Javier could go for, and Fake Out and collision course goes into Miraidon instead like game 1, then the momentum is still on Javier's side of the field. So I think it's down to Francesco. Where's the Fake Out and collision course going to go? Because it's surely going to be Fake Out and collision course into the same target, but which target? Do you protect with the Terapagos, or do you go on the offensive? There's no protects coming out here.
Fake Out onto this Miraidon, stopping him from making any moves, and the collision course now onto the Miraidon. So Miraidon is going to flinch, takes a lot of damage this turn, but more importantly now, Terapagos once again, same as in game 1, is able to get a calm mind off, and with the Terra Shell unbroken, it's able to survive quite a lot of attacks. Incineroar, having used its Fake Out, means it can't move before the Koraidon.
Yeah, we're into the game 1 starts here that was very heavily favored for Francesco instead. Incredibly brave to go for that Calm Mind in the face of what could have been Fake Out and collision course like in game 2, but Francesco did get the better end of the prediction there. The Miraidon still could be KO'd to that collision course, but we've already seen that if you go for that, that allows that single target Terra Starstorm to be able to do very respectable damage to the Koraidon, putting it in range of a second Terra Starstorm at any point in the future. And the Terapagos still has its Terra Shell. That needs to be broken for the collision course to be super effective. And that's almost certainly going to come from the U-turn. It just depends on whether you maybe protect the Koraidon to deal with the Miraidon, or, like we are seeing, just KO it like in that game 1.
Yeah, this looks like a run back of game 1. Miraidon once again gets knocked out without being able to do any damage. But we saw the results of game 1. Francesco used his Miraidon to draw the attacks away. And Terrapagos once again goes for the single target Terra Starstorm onto this Koraidon. So looks like there hasn't been too much deviation in the choices our players have made between that game 1. And look, it's the U-turn once again into the Terrapagos does break the Terra shell, which means that the collision course from this Koraidon would now be super effective if this Terrapagos chooses to stay in its regular form.
Yeah, and we got the Calyrex joining the field once again. We're still repeating that game 1, so the Calyrex does need to get that nasty block going to be able to threaten the damage it needs to, because that Terrapagos did get its Calm Mind. We're seeing the same Pokemon in the back for Francesco as well. So is Sinistcha or Incineroar both very reasonable switch-ins here? We saw it was Incineroar last time. Is it going to be that as well? Because Sinistcha could get that Hospitality, get that Terra Shell once again. So yeah, the Terrapagos, it's all set up. We saw it 2-shots everything now. Assuming that the Ogerpon is still in the back, it could have been a switch up. Fluttermane or Brute Bonnet is still reasonable enough to bring this game, especially the Brute Bonnet if that's waiting in the back. If the Terrapagos gets rid of the electric terrain, the Spore could help. And we're seeing Francesco taking his time to be able to think here, because either Pokemon switch in is entirely reasonable. It was Incineroar last time, and it's Sinistcha this time to get that Terra Shell active once again.
Yeah, now this Terrapagos is going to be healed up back to full health. There it is, a little bit 10 HP back, but that is just enough to get that Terra Shell back to unbroken. So Terrapagos, once again, got that very solid defenses up. And now, I wonder, is the Calyrex going to be faster than the Koraidon? And that means it could potentially break the Terrapagos' Terra Shell. But of course, there's that Sinistcha on the other side with the Rage Powder.
Yeah, you could very, very easily go for that and then keep the Terrapagos safe. You could go for Trick Room if you want to get fancy, and the Terrapagos, if it doesn't get targeted, if you're focusing down the Sinistcha to break its Focus Sash and then KO it, then that could do good damage. But I was going to say, Koraidon surely wants to switch out here, because it is still having his only real way of breaking through the Terrapagos. And if you went on the offensive and Sinistcha went for Rage Powder, you would have lost that Koraidon. So Incineroar switching in, we've seen it take that Terra Starstorm very comfortably, especially because now it's going to be spread once again with that Terra Stella Terastallization.
Francesco now deciding it is time for this Terrapagos to get into its ultimate form and deal out even more damage, wiping away the sun and the electric terrain from the field. And it's going to be dishing out Spread Move +1 Terra Starstorm, but it looks like Calyrex wants to have absolutely nothing to do with anything this turn. Just going to keep itself nice and safe with a Protect, and allows this Terrapagos to get a not very impactful Terra Starstorm off, but good chip damage onto this Incineroar.
It does absolutely build up. We saw that in the game 1. Like, this is fine. It's okay damage. But when you do that 3 more times, that's going to be able to start getting that Incineroar into KO range. A little bit interesting. Sinistcha outspeeding the Terrapagos. I guess with Focus Sash, you're able to invest in your speed a bit more because you don't need as much survivability. But just a nice, interesting thing to know. That actually probably means that it's faster than the Incineroar. So you can't just go for the double target into that Sinistcha with a Psychic / Asperage and then the knockoff. Or maybe even U-turn, because then you'd be able to bring the Sinistcha down to its Focus Sash without then sacrificing your Calyrex to the Shadow Ball that could be KOing it. And if you go for the Terastallization to be able to get into your Dark typing and resist the Shadow Ball, well, now you're going to be one-shot by that Terra Starstorm turning super effective. So I think this is actually a very, very nice, I wouldn't call it a pin as such from Francesco, but it's just a very nice ball position. And the Focus Sash is the key thing that allows that, because here's the Astral Barrage. The Sinistcha's able to survive on 1 HP.
Yeah, that Astral Barrage knocking down the Sinistcha down to 1 HP. Sinistcha, that Focus Sash just coming in so clutch. And first, that Calyrex is going to take a little bit of recoil damage, but a super effective ×4 Shadow Ball onto this Calyrex. Calyrex is not going to be able to survive, and now this Terrapagos is going to be able to dish out a +1, a single target Terra Starstorm. I would expect this Incineroar to survive it, but Incineroar is going to be brought so low this turn, and just hang on there, one more turn left. But the U-turn does knock out the Sinistcha, so no more redirection from Francesco there, but does allow Francesco to have that final unrevealed Pokemon in the back.
Yeah, all the Koraidon now. The Koraidon is very freed up because the Incineroar is the last Pokemon for Francesco, and now Collision Course is going to be able to one-shot the Incineroar and probably not one-shot the Terrapagos because of the Electric Seed, but it's going to be able to do some absolutely massive damage. If the Incineroar is joining the field for both of these trainers, which it does seem to be, we need to pay attention to these Intimidates. If Javier's goes first, then that's going to give him a huge advantage here, and that is the case. So now the fake-out pressure is surely on Javier's side of the field. That means you can go for fake-out on Terrapagos and Collision Course into the Incineroar. That means you have to trade fake-outs here. But that frees up the Koraidon. If the Incineroar on Francesco's side of the field had been faster, then you could have gone for the fake-out into Incineroar and then Terra Starstorm, and that would have almost certainly won the game. But Javier's being faster does keep him in this.
Yeah, Javier's Incineroar, that training just so important. And now, gonna have to see whether or not which Pokemon Javier targets with his fake out, or could this Incineroar be a speed tie between the Intimidates? Who knows? We're going to have to find out. This is a really close, but it looks like the fake out is going to come out first onto this Terrapagos, and the trading fake outs onto this Koraidon. So, not really much damage dealt this turn, a little bit of a nullified turn, but does mean this turn out, this Koraidon is going to be able to land a super effective Collision Course. And if it picks the target as Incineroar, it's going to go down.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Koraidon predicts the Protect or not. And if it goes to the Terrapagos and hits it with no Protect, then
there's a Protect.
How much damage it would be? It wasn't the Pokemon we were expecting to protect, it's the Koraidon going for that Protect. So that means that this Terra Starstorm should be able to pick up the KO on this Incineroar. The fact that it took a single target Terra Starstorm should have put it in range of this spread one now. I don't think that would have been the case. It would have been 3 spread Terra Starstorms. But yeah, that is the KO. Surely there's a Pokemon in the back to support this Koraidon to allow it to just go on the offensive with its Collision Courses, because it might be that it just needs 2 Collision Courses to win the game. It might need a 3rd, depending on if the Electric Seed survives or allows the Terrapagos to be able to survive. Let's see, it is still the Ogerpon here, and we haven't used the Terrestrialization on Javier's side of the field yet, so maybe the Terra Rock could come out to allow that Ivy Cudgel to KO the Incineroar, but then you sacrifice your Sturdy, and then you'll be one-shot by the Terra Starstorm. So, yeah.
This is close.
This is close. It might come down to if the Terrapagos protect again or not. A double target of Ivy Cudgel and Collision Course, that will KO, for sure. That will KO. And then that would win the game for Javier if Terrapagos doesn't protect. But if it doesn't, that was the double target. That could be incredibly crucial, and there's no Protect here coming out.
Oh, here comes the Collision Course. Super effective onto Terrapagos. Is not going to be enough to knock out the Terrapagos. Followed up by an Ivy Cudgel into this Incineroar. It is going to be a one-hit knockout. No critical Incineroar not being able to survive it. Allows this Terrapagos to get an attack off a Terra Starstorm. This will knock out the Koraidon and will deal quite a bit of damage to this Ogerpon. Now the next question is, can this Ogerpon now get the knockout onto this Terrapagos if it goes for the Terra Rock?
I mean, it has to, right? There, you want the damage boost, and we saw in the previous game, I don't think it was going to be enough. Based on the previous game damage, of course, and I'm not going to speak it into existence, we know what Ivy Cudgel has on it available to it
Here
as
we go.
slight secondary effects. I'm not going to say it.
Here we go. Here we go. Ivy Cudgel coming off from this Ogerpon. Can this Ogerpon do it? Can it clutch out the win for Javier? Ivy Cudgel onto this Terrapagos. It is not enough to get the knockout. Terrapagos hangs on with 19 HP, and it's going to return with a Terra Starstorm onto this Ogerpon, and Francesco Pioparo will be the winner of the Swiss Round 3 of the Prague Regional Championships. Wow.
And yeah,
so close.
So close there. A critical hit would have done it, and now I can say that because I didn't speak it into existence. I didn't jinx it, no. Really nicely done.
Within, clutching distance of being able to take a 4th title there. So much consistency.
Yeah, can you believe it? That's not even on his kind of graphics for achievements.
There's too many.
Yeah, 2nd place at NEIC. Yeah, and he was actually going up against this very team that Akil has back then. Federico Camporesi winning the tournament, of course. Yeah, Life Orb Miraidon is one adaptation that came out of the World Championships. There, Kotsukide from Japan finished top 8 with this variant with a Life Orb, giving Miraidon a little bit more flexibility compared to the choice specs. And it allows you to run Protect, so that is what Miraidon has here. And you can also go for that Terra Electric, making it similarly threatening compared to the choice specs variant, but giving you an extra Protect on a team that, yeah, without it, if you run the choice specs, then usually only Ursaluna can run Protect. I mean, sure, you have a Wide Guard over on Lunala, but yeah, just makes you navigate some positions a little bit easier. Overall, this team, very, very flexible.
Yeah.
Any Pokemon can really come with anything. You can play under Trick Room, you can play in Tailwind, you can bring both Lunala and Whimsicott and start in Tailwind and then transition into Trick Room later on. You have Ursaluna that can function in both, so just a very, very flexible team, and a lot of the matchups of this team are kind of very even. So it's not a team where you're like, oh yeah, if I face this team, then I will win. If I face this team, I will lose. It's more like, okay, against any matchup you can kind of play. And I think same can be said about this team from Marco, which is a little bit more unique.
That's true.
We have seen Calyrex, Ice Rider, and Miraidon in the past, but, well, Iron Treads, I think that's a new one.
Yeah, that's one that's been rising up in popularity. You always see it, you know, spattered around here or there, but being able to apply that good pressure with something like the high horsepower, get into a lot of the, you know, Pokemon that are ground weak that we see, a lot of the fire types running around, does give you some good coverage, and particularly into Pokemon like Raging Bolt and Miraidon, it's nice to be able to have that flexibility. Steel Roller as well being a nice way to remove terrain from the field, but considering that a lot of the electric terrain on Miraidon not only helps boost up its attacks, but can help with those photosynthesis activations as well, it can be a nice way to try and counteract some of the strategies of your opponent. The Pokemon for me that's interesting as well is the Urshifu. We've got an Urshifu apiece here, both of them being that Rapid Strike variant, but on Akil's side, you've gone for that Choice Band, going to be more ferocious with the damage that it can deal out, whereas Marco is using this Urshifu more as a fast sweeper, possibly towards in the end game, even with that water terrestrialization as well to deal that extra damage while using the item for the speed.
Yeah, I think Lunala is going to be a key piece here for Akil. With the Electric Seed, you can take on hits from Ice Rider much better. And then also Knockoff, well, it's still 4 times super effective, but when you consider Shadow Shield and the Electric Seed activating and then being gone, yeah, then Knockoff's power is weaker, so then actually Lunala can sit on the field against Incineroar just a little bit better. So, yeah, well, Marco kind of likes to play under Trick Room. I think both teams can go fast as well, and yeah, this is already Marco indicating that, okay, with this Iron Treads, a Pokemon that is specifically on this team against opposing Miraidon, yeah, you can go on the offensive right away. And this is, though, where the Life Orb comes in clutch for Akil, because there's a little bit of a mind game now going on, since Miraidon could also go for Protect on this turn 1.
Yeah, that's very true. Both of these trainers bringing their Miraidons front and center. The electric trains in field, the Hadron engines are activated, and critically as well, that photosynthesis up for the Iron Tread. Sorry, the Quark Drive, not photosynthesis. It's the future type.
Yeah, but boosts up the speed of this Iron Treads and presumably makes it the fastest Pokemon on the field right now. So while Akil's Miraidon seems to be outspeeding Marco's and would threaten a lot of damage, because you can pair it now with the Iron Treads, and because Miraidon cannot Terra out of the weakness to ground type attacks, already a big choice here for Akil. Do you just risk going down to a high horsepower from this Iron Treads, or are you maybe trying to make a call here? It seems like swapping out Lunala right away, foregoing the defense boost from Electric Seed, but using Incineroar to get Intimidate down onto Iron Treads is what Akil decides to go for.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. You do lose that boost, as you mentioned, but I think bringing in the Intimidate is really nice to stop the Iron Treads from just running rampant on the field. The high horsepower is going to come through into that Miraidon, but thanks to the Intimidate, Miraidon is going to be able to stay here in the game. A little bit of HP lost here thanks to the Life Orb, but the Draco Meteor comes through from Akil's Miraidon into Marco's. That is a solid one-hit KO.
And a big play by Akil, identifying that, okay, I need to switch an Incineroar to reduce my opponent's attack stats so my Miraidon can take this hit, but then also kind of expecting this Miraidon not to go for the Terra Fairy. So a little bit of a risky move there, but it pays off since Marco tried to delay their Terra further. And often with these type of teams, you want to keep the Terra around for your Ice Rider, because that is going to stay on the field for a long time, so you really don't want it to be weak against Moongeist Beam, against Flare Blitz, or any of those moves.
Yeah, Miraidon in a difficult spot now as well. It's had a special attack reduced by that Draco Meteor, and it's on very low HP. It's going to go down to anything that Marco is going to throw its way at this point in time. But on Akil's side, you can either switch out, bring something in, or be in a position where you're happy for it to go down to get that free switch. A Pokemon in the back can come through unscathed.
Absolutely. Well, now Akil has to kind of navigate this next turn. Well, Miraidon at a reduced special attack stat, and also underspeeding this Iron Treads. So you would want to swap out Miraidon, but that's also quite obvious. You do have Fake Out threatening as well on this turn, so yeah, no attack into Miraidon, but Incineroar can take it quite well.
Yeah, it takes it really well. Does do over 50%, so it doesn't necessarily want to take another one of those in the following turn. As Miraidon changes course and goes for the Electro Drift, we'll find it's marked down onto the unrestricted on Marco's side, but is not going to be able to put it into anywhere near the danger zone. So Marco now in a position where this Calyrex has the potential to get some knockouts with a Glacial Lance, but it looks like Incineroar is going to be able to get the first KO in this turn.
Yeah, another turn, another KO for Akil, already removing 2 of Marco's Pokemon from play, but now Marco strikes back with a Glacial Lance.
And this is the critical thing. You get the KO on Miraidon, you're able to get a Chilling Inane boost and boost up your attack a little bit further. Not quite enough though, Marcus, to get the second KO on Incineroar there.
Yeah, not quite, just 5 HP remaining for Akil, and this can be very important because, of course, any extra boost would be nice for this Calyrex Ice Rider. Crucially, still no Terra invested from Marco, and now it's time to go back into Lunala. Now, we have seen it swap out on the first turn, so the defense boost is gone. However, it still has Shadow Shield intact, and yeah, with Incineroar now joining the field over on Marco's side, Lunala can't do a lot of damage, but it will be difficult to knock out for Marco.
Yeah, I think if you're the Calyrex as well, you still have to worry about a potential Moongeist Beam coming through from the Lunala here. You don't have to worry about something like the Meteor Beam with the Power Herb, for example, but Moongeist Beam still, with the dilapidated HP that Calyrex has, that could be a very dangerous spot for it. At the same time, Incineroar, as we know, can go for some devastating damage with the knockoff, but it's not going to be able to get the KO at this range.
Yeah, now both players probably thinking about using their Terra this turn, as Lunala would take a lot of damage from Incineroar's knockoff, and Calyrex Ice Rider also would take so much damage from either Lunala or Incineroar. So let's see Lunala there going first for the Terra Fairy.
I like this. Being the Terra Fairy means you really don't have to worry about the knockoff at all. In addition to the list of things that you were able to mention, Marcus, about, you know, not having an item and the Shadow Shield intact. And as you called it, looks like Terrestrialization is happening a piece on both sides of the stage. For Marco, it's going to be on that Calyrex turning into a Water type. Going to give it a little bit more breathing room from a potential Ghost type Moongeist Beam.
Yeah, there it is. Terra Water invested by Marco. Now let's see. Speed advantage still for Akil. No Trick Room is up, so this Moongeist Beam is going to hurt. But yeah, definitely not enough for the knockout with his Terra Water.
Yeah, great Terrestrialization on Marco's side of the field here. Knockoff is able to follow up from the Incineroar into the Lunala, but look at the pitiful damage, even with a critical hit that was able to deal out. Incineroar's turn is now to go onto the offensive, into the Flare Blitz on the opposing Incineroar here. Again, another crit, but with such minimal damage. However, the recoil is going to be enough to fell Akil's Incineroar.
Yeah, and this is what he wanted to do here, making sure that Incineroar goes down so you don't give another opportunity for a boost over on the Calyrex, but instead, no, it's not going to be any Glacial Lance, it's going to be a Trick Room. And now the final Pokemon for Akil is revealed. It is Ursaluna, which could be troublesome, but we still have Wide Guard on Lunala to play against those Glacial Lances. And I think, yeah, that might just be good enough for Akil to come out of this Trick Room scenario that Marco now has set up finally. But yeah, it might be a little bit too late because Wide Guard blocking any incoming damage from Glacial Lance, and then, well, Ursaluna needs a turn to get going, kind of, until the Flame Orb activates and Guts is activated. But even at this range, yeah, just going potentially for a Headlong Rush might be enough to get the knockout on either Pokemon over on Marco's side.
Yeah, you could even try and go for that Earthquake with the Wide Guard next to you, for example. Even though you normally would go for a Protect and get the Guts boost, as you mentioned, you cannot afford the Trick Room being reversed by that opposing Calyrex. So Ursaluna going straight away for this Earthquake, and I think it might even be enough to get rid of this Calyrex Ice Rider. Let's see if defensively it is. Oh, gets 2 KOs in 1 there, Marcus.
Wow, yeah, proving to be too powerful there. Ursaluna moving first under Trick Room and getting the double knockout. Yeah, big play here, big turn here by Akil, and taking down Marco in this game 1. Yeah, I don't know if I would call it an upset, but I mean, any match that Marco enters, he's got to be a favorite to win.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Marco almost handed Akil the keys to victory there by setting up that Trick Room. Yes, he didn't know that the Ursaluna was in the back, but as soon as Trick Room went up, Akil's like, okay, thank you very much, I'm going to make the most of this. Ursaluna, get on the stage.
Yeah, however, even if it wasn't Ursaluna, I was thinking, oh, what if you brought out Urshifu instead? I think the result would have been the same. Because as soon as you limit it down to Incineroar and Calyrex Ice for your opponent, then either Urshifu or Ursaluna can take it on together with the Wide Guard support provided by Lunala. So, yeah, only if it was the Whimsicott. Maybe then Marco wins.
That could have been different.
Yeah, but of course you need a little bit of physical damage in a matchup like this. So Akil decided to go with Ursaluna. But I think there's definitely, and this is what we were saying about this team, there's definitely room for Akil to switch things up a little bit. If you can deal with Miraidon early, then also Urshifu, of course, would be a great choice. However, like we saw in this first turn, Akil just going on the offensive with a Draco Meteor, knocking out Miraidon in one hit. This is something that Marco now will probably try to avoid going into further games. So you cannot expect the game to just happen the same way. So yeah, I think Ursaluna makes a lot of sense, expecting that you will probably face down Miraidon at some point.
Well, Akil almost made it look easy, right? Just click Draco Meteor into the opposing Miraidon, but there was so many more calculations in there, bringing in the Incineroar critically to get that Intimidate down on the Iron Treads, but also, you know, hoping that Marco wasn't going to click that Terrestrialization button on Miraidon. And now going into the next game, if these trainers find themselves up with a, you know, Miraidon versus Miraidon, Marco might be more tempted to click that Terrestrialization button.
Yeah, absolutely. So you definitely have to consider all the information that you were able to gain from the first game. And yeah, let's see if Marco is trying to switch things up here. Akil, once again, well, coming all the way from the US over and then now facing Marco on stage and keeping cool like that. Definitely impressive, but let's see if he can do it again.
Yeah.
And it seems like he's the one who's actually switching things up.
Yeah, I was going to say, Marco sticking with that Iron Treads and the Miraidon, but Akil changing things up. Incineroar's going to be out front and center this time, getting the Intimidate down straight away onto that Iron Treads, and critically that Lunala in play, using that Electric Seed to boost up his defense.
Yeah, so this time around, intimidating. That's what it does best. Intimidating Iron Treads over on Marco's side. So now there's not going to be a cheeky switch in like we saw in the first game, but Akil is saying, well, you could go for like a Trick Room setup. Well, I could do the same. Because also Marco's team with Iron Treads and Miraidon is on the faster side of things right now. So setting up Trick Room here might be something that Akil could go for. And also, right now I think there's a little bit of mind games going on as to whether Ursaluna maybe switches into potential electric type attacks here on the very first turn. So lots of options for both players. Difficult to navigate, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you just saw a Trick Room right away from Akil.
Yeah, Incineroar as well has the utility to go for that fake out and just slow down one of these Pokemon in play. It's going to be that Miraidon just chipping away at it as the knockoff comes through. But with Shadow Shield intact, no item in play, you can see that the Lunala is going to be able to take that very comfortably. Now you're in a position where that Trick Room can go up, and if Akil does indeed have that Ursaluna in the back, this could be a great way to start sweeping through this game too.
Yeah, and we already know that Miraidon has the choice spec, so it's not easy to reposition or protect it here for Marco. And there could be a double target into that slot. Like you could go for like a U-turn and maybe a Moonblast if you wanted to. But you could also go for a knockoff, potentially hitting Incineroar if it switches in for that slot. So yeah, a lot of options here for Akil. And while he doesn't put out that much pressure with Incineroar and Lunala, the Iron Treads over on the other side, on Marco's side, it's not powerful enough to go for a one-hit KO anyway at this point, being intimidated and all. And so, yeah, it's kind of down to Akil to navigate the next couple of turns, but I assume that he also will have some fast Pokemon in the back, like his Miraidon maybe, so he will not try to end the game under this Trick Room, but also think about a later, like once the Trick Room turns are over, transitioning into the Miraidon kind of pace.
I really like that, you know, utilizing the Trick Room turns while they're there, but then making sure that that's not your only kind of win condition, having a way to utilize and close out the game afterwards. Terrestrialization will take to the stage, though. It is going to be on that Miraidon. Marco keeping it in play for now and turning it into that Fairy type, just to give it maybe a little bit more defensive capability out here onto the field. And Incineroar just going to go straight on the offensive with that Flare Blitz, but finds its mark on its counterpart here, not dealing too much damage at all. If this Lunala has also followed up with a Moongeist Beam, instead it's going to be just the Moonblast. Miraidon's Terrestrialization has really helped it out here. Sadly, though, its special attack has been dropped before it's able to deal out this Electro Drift. Lunala does have its Shadow Shield broken, but the special attack drop keeping it in the game here, Marcus.
Yeah, showing why Moonblast, well, it's such a powerful attack, and also with that 30% chance. Well, we're not in Champions yet, so
that is true.
still has the high chance to get the special attack drop, and yeah, quite significant here. Lunala makes it through the turn, but still the play that Marco decided to go for, switching in Incineroar and then going for the Terra Fairy, a defensive Terra Fairy in this case. I think he was able to kind of mitigate any incoming damage, and I really like that pace of play coming out for Marco, because similarly, like Akil's team, also Marco's team is built in a way that he can play under both, under Trick Room or without it. And so putting Pokemon there that don't take that much damage to just like trade down a little bit, yeah, seems to be a good decision here for Marco. Now though, Akil is saying, okay, I'm bringing in Ursaluna, I want to speed things up a little bit. I want to look for big damage in the next couple of turns.
Yes, Ursaluna is certainly capable of dealing that out. Marco, however, was able to bring the Incineroar in the previous turn, so there could have been the potential here of some kind of move coming through, but instead, Incineroar on Akil's side going to be the first to attack here, going for that U-turn, positioning up as the Ursaluna has come in, and considering that there was the Miraidon there, locked into the Electro Drift, Akil, I think, feeling like this Ursaluna could get in relatively safely, but knockoff comes through, removes the Flame Orb. Guts is not going to activate here, Marcus.
Yeah, I think this was quite a little bit of a risky play there by Akil, saying that, okay, I'm switching in Lunala and Ursaluna, and neither of those really wants to take a knockoff. Now, the good thing for Akil is the fact that, well, Lunala made it on the field safely and can go for some wide guards in the face of this Calyrex Ice Rider. But of course, Ursaluna is much less threatening without the Guts activated by its own Flame Orb. So, yeah, not having an item here is quite huge. And, well, now Akil has to kind of change up his plans. Now, Headlong Rush is still a really powerful move, and we also saw in the previous game Earthquake doing a lot of damage to Incineroar, so I wonder if Earthquake is going to be enough, though, from this range.
That's the thing. In the previous game, both the Pokemon had some dwindled HP, so it was a little easier for Earthquake to get the knockouts, whereas now it's going to be dealing into Pokemon like Miraidon. It does have its Terastallization, but if it's not able to get the KO on that Calyrex, Calyrex can retaliate with some big damage of its own. Lunala, however, going to lend a helping hand here with that Wide Guard, going to stop a Glacial Lance that will hit both sides of the Pokemon from connecting at all, as well as protecting itself from this Earthquake on Ursaluna's side.
Yeah, quite a... looks risky, switching in Miraidon like that under Trick Room, but very well calculated by Marco. Miraidon makes it through the turn with Earthquake, and then you have high horsepower to hit through the Wide Guard and knock out Lunala, getting that chilling Nay boost, and things are looking good for Marco in the second game.
And look how little damage that Earthquake did as well. The Calyrex in a really strong position. You're in Trick Room, you've got the boost, you no longer have to contend with a Wide Guard user on the opposing side, so you're free to start clicking that Glacial Lance.
Yeah, well, Akil can now make use of the fact that Lunala was knocked out just now. Incineroar could come in, and then you can go for like Fake Out and Headlong Rush potentially to get a knockout, because, well, if we look at what's waiting in the back for Marco, neither Iron Treads nor Incineroar really like to take ground-type attacks. So, yeah, that definitely gives a KO to Akil, but, well, at what cost? Then Trick Room is going to be over, and then, well, you have Miraidon, which is good, but there's still Iron Treads waiting over on Marco's side as the perfect counter to that.
That's very true, actually. You just need on Marco's side to start stalling through these Trick Room turns, and then Iron Treads is going to be in a great position. I think the Fake Out, though, is definitely critical for Akil here. You can stop that Calyrex from being able to go for that Glacial Lance, and as you said, follow up with something on that Ursaluna side. Miraidon's really on its last wheels here, so if you went for something like the Headlong Rush or even the Facade without the boost, you're going to be able to get the knockout there. Yeah,
and Akil definitely thinking about it. Now, I think for Marco, you have to wonder, is it worth saving Miraidon even at this point? Because, well, it's at such low HP already. We saw it's slower than his opponent's Miraidon. So I think Marco's probably fine just letting Miraidon go down this turn.
Happy to let it go down. Looks like Incineroar on Akil's side is going to be the first to move here, switching out, bringing the Miraidon on Akil's side actually back into the fray. So both of these trainers bringing this particular restricted into the game here. Hadron Engine activating up those electric type attacks. And actually, it looks like Marco does want to keep his own Miraidon in play. Going to switch it out and bring in possibly the Incineroar here. This is, you know, considering there were two physical attackers on the field before, bringing in an Intimidate, always nice.
Yeah, I don't know, though, if Calyrex needs to protect, and it doesn't, and this is going to be a huge Glacial Lance if it goes off.
Yeah, the Ursaluna finding its mark down on the Incineroar that switched in, so once again, this Calyrex Ice Rider completely unscathed in this turn, and with no Wide Guard to contend with on the opposing side, this is going to be a powerful Glacial Lance.
Yeah, this should be enough for the double knockout, hitting both of them.
Wow, look at that.
Super effective damage. Akil trying to position for when Trick Room was over, but Marco looking at this board saying, well, you know, yeah, you could go for a Fake Out, but it's not going to scratch my Calyrex. I mean, it's going to be okay. I can take hits from an unboosted Ursaluna in this positioning. So just going for the Glacial Lance, and Akil trying to read into that maybe a little bit too much there in this positioning. And now, well, Trick Room is over, but it's a 1v3, and Marco will tie up the series.
Yeah, and I think that's a +3 there on the Calyrex, showing that it's got 3 out of the 4 KOs, and with the Incineroar in play, maybe it could even be the one to get the 4th and final one. I mean, fantastic play by Marco, being able to readjust there and having such faith into that Calyrex Ice Rider. The Intimidate not even going to be able to put a dent in its plans thanks to that Clear Amulet. Yeah,
you also, though, have to respect the play by Akil. I think he already knew that it was kind of a bad positioning for him anyway. So he was just hoping for the fact that maybe Marco goes for a play that is a little bit too defensive, maybe going for like at the protect and switch, and then you can get the knockout on an Incineroar, and then you bring in Miraidon or when Trick Room is over. So kind of, yeah, trying to play for that, but well, it didn't work out. Marco saw right through it. And yeah, just like that, now Akhil already probably thinking about game 3.
I mean, sometimes those high-risk strategies can reap high rewards. Just unfortunately for Akhil, this was not that particular moment. But as you could see, they're thinking through utilizing all of these extra seconds of game 2 to start getting prepared for game 3, going for the fake out, going to keep Miraidon in play, but obviously going to flinch. And it will, I think, allow this Calyrex to be able to get a Nullet KO coming through, maybe in the next turn. I was hoping Calyrex would go 4 for 4 here, Marcus.
Yeah, Horsepower would have done it, but Marco was like, well, I'm winning anyway. I don't want to go for some like crazy misses.
Yeah, let's not risk it.
Let's just go for the consistent damage. And now, yeah, maybe now Akhil is ready to throw in the towel and to concede. But of course, now, yeah, you still get a little bit of extra time, as you were saying. Think about what maybe he could have done differently. Now, we saw it was Akhil who switched up, not the Pokemon that he brought to the battle, but the order that he brought them in.
Yeah.
Going for Incineroar and Lunala, it looked nice. You use your opponent's electric terrain, or that they set up to activate your electric seed. Exactly. But yeah, Marco just playing through that so well, and now getting the win on the scoreboard. And yeah, well, Marco, of course, is very, very well prepared for these clutch Game 3 situations. Let's see if Akhil can withstand the pressure.
I mean, I really like the way Akhil went into that game too, you know, having that clear strategy. I want to set up the Trick Room, I want to bring my Ursaluna in from the back. But the pivotal moment for me was when Marco was able to go for the knockoff and that Incineroar. And I think I'm right in thinking he just switched in the Incineroar, so could have gone for a fake out, a very kind of classic play that you would be able to do to slow down Trick Room turns. But instead, going straight away for that knockoff, thinking if Ursaluna comes in, I'm going to be able to remove that Flame Orb. And just that move neutralized a lot of the pressure Akhil had been building up for this Trick Room situation.
Yeah, and to me it looked like a little bit of a win-win situation. So as soon as Marco locked the knockoff, no matter which slot it was targeting, no matter where it was landing, either it was knocking out Lunala or it was removing the Flame Orb on Ursaluna, and both of that definitely so impactful. So yeah, Akhil might want to maybe conserve Lunala a little bit better in the third game, just to try and get the positioning where you have Lunala across from your opponent's Calyrex Ice Rider, just because it's like all the damage from Calyrex Ice Rider lies in Glacial Lance, which is such a strong and powerful move, but of course with Wide Guard you nullify it completely. And therefore, yeah, trying to maybe play a little bit more conservative also with your Ursaluna, try to get it in on a little bit of a safer turn.
Yes.
However, at the same time, when playing a player of Marco's caliber, you have to go for those small risks somewhere, because there's never going to be like a clear, safe win. Because, yeah, Marco would not let himself be open to something like that. So, yeah, you have to take risks somewhere. Let's see who will manage the risks better in this Game 3.
Yeah, it's very hard to out-predict Marco Silva, but we're going to see in Game 3 if Akhil is going to be able to do it. Incineroar and the Calyrex Ice Rider out front and center for Marco Silva. Akhil is bringing forward the Miraidon and the Incineroar of his own team.
Yeah, so once again, Game 3 and the third different lead coming out from Akhil. This time around is going to be Incineroar right away, but wow, no Iron Treads. So Marco switching things up. Let's see though, Intimidate activation order, always important to try and see which Incineroar is faster, just as a reminder. So then, yeah, Marco activated first, so Marco's Incineroar should be moving first, and yeah, that's going to be helpful, because else there would have been the pressure of a fake out and then and maybe Terra Electro Drift. But now you can go for a fake out on Miraidon first and maybe swap out if you want to. You could bring in the Iron Treads right away. Yeah, definitely, once again, it's one of those positionings where there's so many options. And yeah, Akhil trying to navigate through them. Let's see if he'll give us a glimpse of what is waiting in the back for him.
And you don't want to let your Miraidon go down unnecessarily here, you know, taking something like the fake out from the faster Incineroar and then being followed up with something like the Glacial Lance. That could be devastating for Miraidon. At the same time, on Akhil's side, if Marco does want to go potentially for some kind of Trick Room mode in the face of fast Pokemon, that's something that you don't want your fast Pokemon on the field for instead. However, Akhil going, I'm going to switch out one restricted for another. Miraidon get in the back, Lunala come out here, utilize that electric terrain, get that electric sea boost up in the face of both of these physical physical attackers. So Lunala maybe going to try and slow down some wide guard later on. Critically, the fake out coming through into the ghost type means fake out is going to be null and void in this turn. As the Incineroar on Akil's side doesn't go for fake out at all, instead just goes straight on the Flare Blitz, just chipping away at its counterpart across the field. Glacial Lance will come through, however, not going to be doing too much damage to either Pokemon, but I think critically, Marcus, Lunala having its Shadow Seal broken early could be disastrous for it.
Yeah, so Akil trying to predict or make like a little bit of a middle ground play, covering for both potential fake out and also for potential U-turn play. I think that is what he was looking for, hoping that his opponent would go for the U-turn and then bring in maybe the Iron Treads, maybe the Miraidon, and then you can hit it for a lot of damage with Flare Blitz. However, Marco, yeah, just going for a very kind of slow play, just going for the fake out and Glacial Lance, and yeah, I think it backfired a little bit there for Akil. As you were saying, Shadow Shield is already broken. Incineroar taking some decent chip damage here also from the recoil. And yeah, now it's a little bit awkward because Lunala, well, you have to Terra in this positioning, but what are you doing with Incineroar?
Well, I think you make a good point. You're forced to go for that Terrestrialization. Lunala's not running a Protect, and in the face of a knockoff from Incineroar, you have to, you know, remove your 4 times weakness to it, but at the same time, knockoff onto this Ursaluna coming in. We saw how disastrous that was for Akil in Game 2. It really does come down to where this Incineroar has targeted on Marco's side to maybe start, you know, spelling out how the rest of this game is going to go.
Yeah, and there is the Terra Fairy, so yeah, Lunala will definitely make it through the turn, and Ursaluna was swapped in. Okay, Protect, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter. In some way, this Calyrex Ice Rider is not doing any damage. There's no difference whether it's Protect or going for the Glacial Lance. But let's see, though.
Oh,
it's not going to be another. It's not going to be another knockoff like we saw previously. So Ursaluna has hit the field safely.
Yeah, this is a much better positioning for Akil here. Not only are you keeping Lunala in play and you have that wide guard to really kind of deter the Glacial Lancers coming through, but you've got your Ursaluna in. It's now been able to come in. It's going to get the Flame Orb activation, the Guts boost up, and it suddenly becomes such a formidable threat that Marco has to deal with.
Yeah, Now, Miraidon is joining the field, and well, Draco Meteor still would do a ton of damage to this Ursaluna, probably knocking it out right away. So yeah, you have to watch out for that, and it's not as easy as just going for a Wide Guard and Earthquake like we saw Akil go for in some of the previous games. But if Akil can manage to set up Trick Room for this Ursaluna, then of course the story would be different. Now, the fact that Ursaluna can no longer go for the Terra Ghost to avoid some fake outs later on in the game is definitely going to help Marco. So forcing out here the Terra on Lunala, but then not actually going for it, not actually going for the knockoff, instead using the U-turn to bring in Miraidon. A really, really powerful play by Marco on the previous turn, and now he can capitalize on it by maybe going for a Volt Switch into Lunala this turn. And yeah, let's see if Akil can find a way to deal with that.
No, I like that observation, keeping Incineroar in for the end game here for Marco. You want to be able to utilize that Pokemon with the Intimidates and the Fake Outs going forward. Looks like Akil also has read the same message and brings in the Intimidate and Fake Out user of his very own with that Incineroar. Marco, however, making the adjustments. Here comes in that very own Incineroar, so that even in this next turn, you're going to be dilapidating the damage that the Ursaluna can deal with, and then you're going to slow down its pace in the next turn as well. Miraidon does find its mark with the Draco Meteor. That's that's so much damage. So much damage. Not quite a one-hit KO thanks to the little bit of chip it took before, but essentially it completely removes Akil's main strategy from play.
Yeah, a very, very big KO there for Marco. And I like what he was doing, bringing in Incineroar as well. This kind of covers for a situation where Ursaluna tries to go for Protect and Akil switches in their own Incineroar, because then next turn you have the faster Fake Out, so you're still threatening to go for the Draco Meteor and you're not caught out of position. Now though, Ursaluna is down. Well, Miraidon can switch in for Akil, but then once again, Marco has the faster Incineroar, so you can just go for, say, a Fake Out play to neutralize the Miraidon and then maybe swap out your own Miraidon. And yeah, if it is Iron Treads waiting in the back, then that would be, of course, a great Pokemon to switch in and something that Akil has to consider when deciding maybe to go for an electric type move. You don't want to hit Iron Tread switching in, but then also maybe Incineroar could go for a Flare Blitz, try and expect a switch or a Volt Switch coming out from Miraidon over on Marco's side.
Yeah, that's true. The electric type damage would be very formidable, particularly in that electric terrain, but the Draco Meteor does give you that flexibility if a ground type Pokemon like the Iron Treads does indeed come in. Yeah,
let's see though. Miraidon over on Marco's side locked into Draco Meteor at -2. Will have to switch out, as it does now. Let's see if we get to see the Calyrex or if it is going to be the final Pokemon. I think that looks like Iron Treads. There it is.
I promise you, he's happy to be here, even though he looks very grumpy out there on the field. The Quark Drive is activated. The speed is going to be heightened. It's going to be a formidable threat, so Marco needs to be able to keep it safely in the game through this turn. Incineroar flinching on Akil's side as Miraidon does go for that Volt Switch. There's going to be a little bit of positioning. We're going to see the Lunala join the field for Akil here. Okay,
well, that's a small step for Akil. Bringing in Lunala is going to help. However, well, we have the Steel Roller as an option. For Marco. That would hit Lunala, that is now a Fairy type, for super effective. Yeah, well, how do you even play against that? I'm thinking about maybe a Steel Roller and U-turn or knockoff play. Yeah, because you want to cover a potential Miraidon switch in. But yeah, that's something you have to deal with. And yeah, I think Akil also recognizes the threat of the Steel Roller.
I mean, having that Fairy Terra type was so beautiful earlier on to give you that flexibility, but now it can be so detrimental in the face of the Iron Treads. Miraidon comes back as quickly as it left us in order to preserve that Lunala from that potential Steel Roller. It's exactly the choice that has been given. Miraidon able to take this really well, but critically, you're going to be able to see the side effects come through. The electricity leaves the field. Steel Roller completely removes terrain from play. It also, however, will remove that Quark Drive, so not going to be as speedy on that Iron Treads going forward. The knockoff, not enough to be able to get the KO, followed up by that Incineroar, as Incineroar on Akil's side is able to find its mark, but not enough to get the KO on that Iron Treads.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about Marco's team is the fact that he still has his own Miraidon as well, so he can reset the electric terrain if he wants to, give his Iron Treads the speed boost, and then outpace Miraidon and Incineroar that way. So yeah, that's something that Akil will have to deal with. But yeah, this Iron Treads, yeah, it's just really, really powerful in this matchup, and Marco is showing how and why.
Yeah, it really means business at the moment, and I like your observation about the flexibility that Marco has with that Miraidon to, you know, boost back up the Iron Treads. You can still go for that Steel Roller when it's back up and apply pressure to the Lunala as soon as it rejoins the field. But at the same time, Marco has to keep an eye on the HP of his Pokemon. They're not in a very safe situation. Big damage coming through from Miraidon or Incineroar will be able to get KOs if Marco lets them.
Yeah, every turn mattering so much. Players taking their time here to make a decision, but it's not going to be the switch to Miraidon, just the high horsepower. Marco calling his opponent's move there. And yeah, Akil trying to cover for that switch into Miraidon, protects his own Miraidon. But yeah, Marco had different plans, going for the high horsepower. And yeah, that's huge play again by Marco.
Yeah, Iron Tread's not messing around, and we literally said coming into this game, it's very hard to outpredict Marco Silva because he often has the predictions on you. And that was a fantastic play around the Protect, getting rid of the Incineroar and bringing Akil down to the last two remaining Pokemon.
Yeah, and now, well, Lunala cannot go for a Protect, so if Marco wanted to, he could switch on Miraidon now and go for the Steel Roller. However, I believe it has been intimidated. The Iron Treads has been intimidated, if I'm not mistaken, so maybe you want to swap it out. However, yeah, Steel Roller is a very powerful move, so yeah, might just do enough damage anyway, or you can go for high horsepower into Miraidon as well. Yeah, Marco has all the choices here.
And you have to contend with the fact that Akil has the Life Orb on that Miraidon. It's in a very dangerous spot at the moment. A couple of attacks coming through. The Life Orb recoil itself might be enough to fell that restricted Pokemon from play. Quark Drive back in action, however. Steel Roller will come through to Lunala, is able to secure the knockout. Akil now only has that Miraidon in play, and the terrain is going to disappear thanks to the Steel Roller.
Yeah, I think it wasn't intimidated, but that is so powerful. Steel Roller removing the electricity from the field, and well, it's only down to that Miraidon for Akil, which will get a KO with that Draco Meteor. Nice play there, but yeah, a little too late, because as you were saying, even just the recoil from Life Orb is going to stack up, and it seems like Marco has done it.
Yeah, that's the thing. You've got the Calyrex in play now as well. It's going to be able to hit really hard with those Glacial Lances, and it's just a little bit too difficult for the Miraidon, I think. There you can see it, Akil locking in the forfeit. Marco Silva in a Game 3 thriller is going to take this set. Huge congratulations to Marco. What an incredible showcase of competitive Pokemon action from both of these trainers. They certainly gave us a show to enjoy, didn't they? Oh,
absolutely. I think the Life Orb was actually gone there because of a knockoff earlier. It's just so a Calyrex Shadow Rider player myself, I can tell you a lot about the intricacies of that team or that matchup. But, well, basically, you have Calyrex Shadow Rider with a Focus Sash, so you can take any one attack, and you're trying to set up endgames where this Calyrex can knock out every Pokemon on your opponent team. in this particular matchup, I think Chi-Yu is going to have a big role potentially. Now we'll get to talk about some of the Pokemon over on Victor's side that could make this difficult in a second, but Chi-Yu with a Choice Scarf outspeeding and hitting Calyrex and Zamazenta for a lot of damage if it so chooses to. Notably though, there's no Dark Pulse on this one, so you might have to rely on Overheat or Snarl if you want to hit Calyrex. But yeah, Chi-Yu definitely a powerful Pokemon. And then it's a game about, well, can you try and force your opponent's Calyrex to go for the Terrestrialization and then maybe make something happen there. Raging Bolt is another one of those Pokemon that also can definitely be helpful in this matchup due to the priority from Thundercloud.
Yeah, that Magnet-boosted Raging Bolt, Terra Electric, when it's on the field with that Chi-Yu, it can actually deal really, really substantial damage. And the Chi-Yu having quite interesting move choice of Ruination instead of Dark Pulse means that it can really ignore a lot of defensive Pokemon and just take away half of their remaining HP. So this Chi-Yu could potentially be a little bit bulkier compared to regular variants of Chi-Yu. And of course, Victor's team on the screen here, it is going to be Shadow Rider Calyrex, this time with the Life Orb, paired with Zamazenta, Incineroar, Smeargle, Raging Bolt, and Rillaboom. So the two teams are actually quite similar, just very different support casts.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of a different game plan that Victor will want to go for. So you don't have the security of the Focus Sash, but with Terra Dark, you can allow your Calyrex to take those Astro Barrage as well. So yeah, unless something crazy happens, the Terra for all games will be on Calyrex Shadow Rider for Victor. And then having not the double, but the triple fake out here with Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Smeargle really allows you to get those free turns for Calyrex. So usually you wouldn't want to bring all three of them, but it allows you to kind of pick the support cast that you feel like matches up best into your opponent's team. Now, we were talking about the Choice Scarf Chi-Yu over on the other side, so I feel like the supporting cast that Victor chooses for this matchup should be something that matches up well into the Chi-Yu. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Rillaboom, for example, was left behind just because of how difficult it would be to go up against the Chi-Yu.
Yeah, Rillaboom does not enjoy facing up against a Chi-Yu. It's quite interesting that both players have a Dark and Fire typing, just a very different Pokemon. One is a Chi-Yu, one's an Incineroar, and then both players have a Follow Me, one in Ogerpon and one in Smeargle, and then they've also both got Raging Bolt and Rillaboom. So it kind of goes to show that this is the kind of team composition you want to use. You know, a little bit of a Follow Me support paired up with some grassy terrain boost that the Rillaboom can bring up, and also that Raging Bolt just as an extra bit of damage boost output. And now our players are almost about to get ready into this game one. It is going to be Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and Incineroar up against Shadow Rider, Calyrex, and Chi-Yu, that beautiful shiny Chi-Yu up on the screen.
Yeah, finally we get to use that after it was distributed after Regulation I was already over, but a great opportunity. Yeah, so Chi-Yu joining the field right away, and already a big decision to make there for Victor because, well, this Chi-Yu is Terra Ghost, so it could go ahead and go potentially for a Terra Ghost and Overheat right away. That makes me think that Victor might want to go for maybe a defensive play, like you could go for a Protect and Knock Off just to get rid of that Choice Scarf right away. But then, yeah, even without the Choice Scarf, Chi-Yu is still quite threatening. Going for the Fake Out is also a little bit risky because of potential Encore coming up next turn. So yeah, I wonder if Mateo is ready to make a big call here on this turn one already. He's hovering over the Ruination, and well, that could do, well, 50% to either target and allow Calyrex to maybe get a KO with that Terra Ghost boosted Astro Barrage.
Looks like a turn one Terrestrialization is going to be used onto the Calyrex. And this is going to be Calyrex on Mateo's side, wanting to boost those Astral Barrage damage output even further. This Calyrex is quite safe against a one-hit knockout because of the Focus Sash. And looks like Victor, not wanting to risk his Calyrex this turn just yet, goes for a nice Protect, but the Ruination goes off into the Incineroar and takes off a nice, healthy 50% of its health, followed up by a Terra Ghost boosted Astral Barrage from Mateo's Calyrex. How much damage is this going to do to this Incineroar? It is not, I don't believe it's going to be enough to get the knockout, but it will do quite a bit. Ooh, Incineroar just hanging on there, but does follow up with a knockoff and brings this Calyrex down into the red.
Yeah, so using the Beats of Ruin there to boost up Calyrex damage a little bit further, but it is still not enough. Victor, they're probably confident that Incineroar can take that double up of moves, and now, well, with Knockoff doing a lot of damage, and can now think about going for this Terra Dark, as now he has confirmation Chi-Yu is locked into Ruination, will not be able to hit this Calyrex with an overheat or something like that. And therefore, yeah, Victor's Calyrex is kind of open to now go for this terrestrialization, Terra to Dark, and go for Astral Barrage on of his own. And, well, at the World Championships, Victor was running a modest Calyrex Shadow, so maybe we can expect Mateos to be faster, but let's see if he's scared about the potential threat of Encore, which is what Mateo had available now for this turn.
It looks like this Calyrex Shadow Rider on Victor's side doesn't want to take any attacks and swaps in the Smeargle, which is going to take that Ruination. And Smeargle, you know, a very frail Pokemon, but of course, Ruination taking away half health means that it's always guaranteed to do that much damage. And the Astral Barrage, no effect at all on the Smeargle, but does finally knock out this Incineroar and gives Mateo's Calyrex a +1 boost to its special attack. So now that Calyrex at 18 HP is actually doing a quite big threat.
Talking about boosts though, Smeargle actually getting the speed boost in this situation. And, well, against a Choice Scarf Chi-Yu, usually Chi-Yu could still be faster, but because we have Chi-Yu locked into Ruination, it will not be able to knock out Smeargle. So, well, what didn't go so well for Victor in his top 8 set at Worlds, where it was his opponent actually getting those
I remember that, yes.
Yep. Now Victor is benefiting from that and can now switch in his own Calyrex Shadow, and he has all the options in the world. He can go for a Spore into Calyrex, he could Spore into the Chi-Yu, go for the Terra Dark on his own Calyrex, and making it kind of invincible against anything that Mateo can throw at it. So even though this was a huge turn for Mateo, getting the call correct, the speed boost definitely flipped things around quite significantly.
Yeah, the Smeargle's just zooming tracks around the battlefield right now. We're going to have to see whether or not it tries to go for a Spore. Of course, Mateo's Calyrex is still a very big threat with that +1, and, you know, he might be forcing Victor's Calyrex into a Terra Dark to try and absorb those Astral Barrages, and both of our players are taking quite a bit of time to try and make sure that they make the correct selections. Looks like Chi-Yu wants to swap out its move choice, and it's going to be recalled. In its place, going to be the Ogerpon instead. So Ogerpon Cornerstone is going to swap in, and the Spore comes out into this Calyrex. A very nice targeting there from Victor, and allows Victor's Calyrex to get... for first, that Calyrex is going to take the first turn of Snooze, and now Victor's Calyrex is going to finish off with an Astral Barrage.
Yeah, great play there by Victor, identifying that, well, even if Chi-Yu stays on the field, it can only go for a Ruination, and that's not gonna get a KO kind of ever. But now, with the Spore and the Astral Barrage combination, knocking out Calyrex Shadow over on his opponent's side, also the Terra is now gone, and yeah, I mean, Smeargle is also carrying Wide Guard, can play around a potential Snarl. Let's see, though, what is Moody gonna do?
Oh no, speed drop.
Okay, well, that can be impactful, because now the Chi-Yu should be faster. So you could switch in Chi-Yu and then maybe try and, yeah, call out the move that Smeargle is gonna go for, and then either go for Snarl if you're expecting a Follow Me, or go for, say, Overheat if you're expecting the Wide Guard. And then, well, Ogerpon, though, already down to 1 HP. Yeah, that is not good for Mateo either, because even with the Snarl, Victor could go ahead and go for a Terra Dark on the Calyrex. Say, Terra Dark, Astral Barrage, and Follow Me would allow the Calyrex to make it through the turn no matter what. And even with the reduced special attack, then, well, Chi-Yu would be locked in the field if you can get the knockout on Ogerpon, and Snarl is not going to do enough damage against a Terra Dark Calyrex Shadow Rider.
No, it will not be doing enough damage. So the Calyrex is, you know, kind of in that position where that Ogerpon at 1 HP also is looking at like a very juicy target for this Calyrex. It's really going to want to try and get that knockout and maybe mitigate all of those special attack drops if that Snarl comes off. And Mateo is really, you know, having to think about what move he locks into. The Smeargle can easily just click Wide Guard and block those Snarls. And if that Chi-Yu goes for the Overheat, that's the Calyrex potentially going down if it manages to connect. And it looks like Ogerpon is actually trying to keep itself safe. But first, we're going to get a Terrestrialization from Victor's side into the Calyrex. So now, this will be a Dark-type Calyrex Shadow Rider, going to resist those ×4 super effective Snarls coming off from this Chi-Yu. What does Chi-Yu lock into? First of all, Ogerpon's going to keep itself nice and safe this turn. And the Chi-Yu, did that Chi-Yu read the attack? Oh, Smeargle, follow me first. Just wanting to make sure that its teammate is going to keep nice and safe. And the Overheat comes up into the Smeargle. A very nice follow me there, dropping the Chi-Yu's special attack down to -2 and allowing this Calyrex to get an Astral Barrage off potentially.
Yeah, absolutely safe play by Victor there, identifying that, okay, I don't actually need to go for any reads or anything here, because with this play, he's covering both Overheat and Snarl in a way. And yeah, with Ogerpon being so low, now Chiyu also taking a lot of damage here from this Astro Barrage. Now it's all about just allowing Calyrex to attack just a couple more times, and Raging Bolt being the final Pokemon here for Victor is actually an approach that he was also doing back at Worlds a couple of times. So dropping Zamazenta for this matchup and prioritizing the priority move that Thunderclap offers for Raging Bolt, and that's also going to be helpful here in this situation.
Yeah, it really forces the Ogerpon to go for the follow me if it wants to keep its teammates safe. But if it does, it's just going to get knocked out by this Calyrex. Calyrex now, because the Chiyu is at -2 special attack, is going to be able to survive this Overheat unless it gets a critical hit. So, no, let's not jinx this Chiyu and see what moves this Ogerpon goes for. Ooh, Mateo going for a double protect / double spiky shield, and he gets it! So this Ogerpon is actually going to keep itself nice and safe again for this turn, allowing the Overheat to land on this Calyrex, and it is not enough to get the knockout. And now Chiyu is at -4 special attack, and the Calyrex is going to follow up with a powerful Astral Barrage, and that resist is not going to be a resist when it's so strong.
Yeah, boosted up already, now going to be boosted up even further after this Grim Nay boost. And this Calyrex, though, look at what Victor did, actually not going for the Thunderclap, which seemed kind of obvious and would have worked against this play, but instead going for a Thunderbolt, saying that, okay, well, you're probably going for a follow me, and I don't want to kind of end up in a position where, I don't know, an Overheat critical hit will leave me without any damage this turn. Yeah, with a double spiky shield and getting that call right, Mateo maybe has a chance to do something in this game, because now we can always play Follow Me and Wildguard Mind games, because, well, Calyrex either will go for a Psychic, but then if you hit the Follow Me, then you can draw that away, or if it goes for Astro Barrage, we can go for Wildguard. So I think instead it's likely that Victor actually will want to go for a Protect here on the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and then go for an attack on the Ogerpon, but yep, looks like it's just going to be an attack from Calyrex instead.
Yeah, Ogerpon trying to redirect any attacks away, and fantastic redirection there, drawing away the Thundercap, but the Astral Barrage is going to come off from this Calyrex. It's going to get the knockout onto this Ogerpon. It is easily enough to get the knockout onto Zamazenta, and Victor Medina will be taking game 1.
Yeah, and once again, it's one of those spots where Victor identifies that, well, I don't actually have to go for the read. Instead, going for this Thunderclap, this is going to cover an attack coming out from Ogerpon. And, well, the only way to kind of stop this Astro Barrage play would be to go for a Wide Guard on Zamazenta. But, well, if you're going for a Wide Guard on Zamazenta, well, what is Ogerpon going to do? I mean, if it wants to do damage, then it's going to be knocked out by Thunderclap. So this move was always going to be safe here for Victor. And Mateo, after what looked like a good start there, going for the Ruination, taking the first KO on Incineroar, then finally has to admit that, wow, okay, I had more Pokemon, I had more HP, but it didn't matter because my opponent was able to position their Calyrex Shadow Rider just a little bit better there in the end game.
Yeah, it was such a nice pin there in the end. Like you mentioned, if the Zamazenta is going with a Wide Guard, it's not attacking. And so even though the Zamazenta does threaten that Dark-type Calyrex Shadow Rider, if it tries to go for the body press, it's just going to get knocked out by that +2 Astral Barrage. And I really like the way Victor supported his Calyrex. He was able to stay on the field at the same time. He baited the Chiyu into going for that Overheat, and then the Chiyu at -2 special attack was no longer a threat against the Calyrex. One thing I do like to call out is that the Ruination actually was quite useful against the Incineroar, because Chiyus typically don't really like facing off against the Incineroar, but with Ruination, you don't really mind that much. You can just take away half of its health and then allow the teammate to deal the remaining 50%.
Yeah, I have to say though, I actually, after watching how this first game played out, I think Mateo needs to switch something up. Because even though he got the calls correct with the Ruination on the first 2 turns, so he got the first one correct, going for Ruination and Astro Barrage into Incineroar, and then the second turn, he understood the pressure that he was applying with Encore onto Calyrex that had just protected over on Victor's side, and got that turn correctly as well. And then he still lost the game, so that tells me that maybe the plan wasn't actually that good against what Victor was doing. Over for Victor's side, I don't know if there's any reason for him to really switch something up significantly. So yeah, maybe instead Mateo I think there's a couple of things that he could be doing. One option is going for a Rillaboom and Zamazenta lead with Calyrex and Chi-Yu in the back. This also offers quite a bit of pressure against this Incineroar and Calyrex lead, and then you would kind of play towards a late game Chi-Yu instead.
That's a really good point, and we do see Mateo switching it up just a little bit, this time leading with the Zamazenta, so, you know, threatening the wide guards and making sure that the opposing Calyrex Shadow Rider is not going to be able to have as an easy time going for those Astral Barrages.
Yeah, so a little bit of a different approach there coming out from Mateo. This is also definitely something that is very valid, especially if you expect your opponent not to bring their own Zamazenta. So you can utilize your Zamazenta to apply pressure, to have wide guard, force some mind games there. And then also it allows you to kind of threaten Calyrex no matter whether it goes for the Terra or not. You have the faster Calyrex, so you can just go for Astral Barrage and knock it out, or you could kind of force out the Terra, predict the Terra Dark, and then go for a body press at some point. So all the pressure there on Mateo's side, and also even on the first turn, you could, if you expect a Fake Out to come out, you could just go for a couple of Protects and then threaten Encore the following turn. So definitely really, really scary positioning for Victor. Let's see how he tries to play out of this one.
Yeah, there's so much pressure coming off from Mateo's side. Looks like Victor, feeling the pressure, goes immediately for the Terra Dark onto this Calyrex Shadow Rider, just to make sure that it doesn't take super effective damage from this Astral Barrage that comes out on Mateo's side. And this Astral Barrage, not very effective on either of those Pokemon, but leaves, firstly, the Astral Barrage coming off, knocking down Mateo's Shadow Rider into its Focus Sash and deals over half to the Zamazenta, but leaves Zamazenta wide open to go for a body press. And which target did this Zamazenta go for? It is going to be into this Incineroar and knocks it out clean off the field, and Mateo takes an early lead.
Yeah, it's nice to get this KO for Mateo, but yeah, he definitely would have preferred to knock out Calyrex instead. So yeah, we got confirmation that, well, Victor's Calyrex Shadow is probably slower and also probably modest based on how much damage it did with Astral Barrage here on to the Zamazenta. But now Smeargle gets to join the field, and yeah, you can go for a Fake Out play potentially. You also threaten Wide Guard maybe down the line. Like right now, yeah, Calyrex probably doesn't want to go for Astral Barrage over on Mateo's side. Yeah, I think this is good for Victor. So even though Mateo took the first KO, Calyrex is down to its Focus Sash, and you have a clear passage to dealing with the Zamazenta for Victor.
So Zamazenta now going for the wider to keep its teammates safe. Calyrex now, a very nice Encore, forcing the opposing Calyrex into the Astral Barrage, which is going to be completely nullified by the wide guard, but does leave the Smeargle wide open to potentially go for a Spore. The Smeargle did not go for the Fake Out, so it's very likely that it went for the Spore, and it is going to be a Spore onto Mateo's Calyrex. So the Calyrex is now fast asleep, but there is still a Zamazenta to deal with, but of course that Smeargle is Focus Sash, so it will be surviving any attack.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by Victor and how he was able to navigate the first game and also the first couple of turns of this game, because, well, in the Calyrex Zamazenta mirror, a lot of players have been kind of saying, oh, it's so many kind of 50-50 calls that you have to make, it's like speed ties, but no, well, Victor is just showing us that, yeah, maybe it's just sheer skill sometimes, because identifying that once again, well, I can go for a Spore on my Smeargle, and the only way for my opponent to stop that is going for the double attack, but then this would give my Calyrex an opening to go for an attack, and yeah, it just worked out perfectly here. Mateo trying to get cute with the Encore and Wide Guard play, but now is really, really far behind.
Yeah, Zamazenta once again goes for the wide guard, knowing that Victor's Calyrex is locked into Astral Barrage, but that does open itself up to a Spore from this Smeargle. So first of all, the Astral Barrage comes off once again from Victor's Calyrex. That is going to do absolutely nothing, but now the Spore will be coming off from the Smeargle, and unfortunately, this Zamazenta is going to be put to sleep. And now there's a Chi-Yu on the field. That is Choice Scarf, so I wonder if we're going to see a similar play of the Follow Me from this Smeargle.
Yeah, well, it does have Wide Guard. Sorry, it does have Heat Wave, so you have to kind of consider that. But yeah, I mean, you could just go for a Protect and Spore play, since neither Pokemon over on Mateo's side has taken any sleep turns yet. So Zamazenta will still stay asleep after the end of the turn. Of course, Calyrex, though, currently is locked into Astral Barrage, so yeah, I'm thinking maybe Calyrex could switch out, and then maybe you go for a Spore. And yeah, I think maybe that's what Victor is doing here.
Yep, you called it. The Calyrex is going to swap out, doesn't want to take any attacks. Raging Bolt comes in, a nice bulky defensive Pokemon to take any attacks from this Chi-Yu. And Raging Bolt is going to get that photosynthesis boost first. Zamazenta takes its very first turn of sleep and now allows this Chi-Yu to get the Heat Wave off. And that's not going to do not very much to the Raging Bolt. Knocks the Smeargle down to its Focus Sash, but 1 HP is all you need to survive an attack and put the Chi-Yu to sleep. 3 out of 4 Pokemon on Mateo's side and all snoozing on the job here.
Yeah, and once more, Smeargle was hitting last or moving last. And so Chi-Yu also didn't take its mandatory turn of sleep yet. So, well, we have the 1 HP Calyrex fully asleep. We got the Chi-Yu fully asleep. And then Zamazenta, well, took 1 turn of sleep. Could maybe wake up this turn. But it's looking against a Raging Bolt and Smeargle combo. So Smeargle could just go ahead and go for a follow me, allowing Raging Bolt to go for a powerful attack. Thunderbolt might just knock out Zamazenta from this range. So yeah, once again, Victor just having all the cards in his hand to deal this, yeah, a lot of damage now after setting the board up with Smeargle, saying, okay, well, you know what, Smeargle, you did a great job, but let me bring in my Calyrex to threaten even more damage.
Calyrex, now that it's swapped back in, is no longer Encore locked into Astral Barrage. We're going to have to see whether or not this Zamazenta stays asleep for another turn. It does not. It is able to wake up and go for the body press onto this Calyrex. So Calyrex is going to be knocked out without being able to dish out any damage upon coming in, but does leave Victor's Raging Bolt open for an attack. And what does this Raging Bolt do? It's going to be a Thunderbolt onto the opposing Raging Bolt. Fantastic swap in from Mateo there.
Okay. Yeah, well, hold on a second there. It seems like maybe Mateo found a way back into this game there. Victor, just this one turn, maybe playing a little bit too greedy, wanting to get Calyrex into positioning, but Zamazenta waking up and landing its body press perfectly onto the Terra Dark Calyrex knocks out the big damage dealer over on Victor's side. Now, well, it's still not over because, well, we have a Raging Bolt that can do a lot of damage. It can probably take a body press from this range, and then we have 2 Pokemon that are asleep in the back for Mateo. So even though this is a 4 versus 2 situation, it still feels like this couldn't be anyone's game.
And now Mateo goes for his own Terrestrialization into the Raging Bolt. Ooh, Terra Electric boosts the Magna boosts the Raging Bolt. These electric type attacks are going to hurt a lot. First, the Fake Out comes off onto the Zamazenta, just blocking it from with a very insignificant critical hit from blocking the Zamazenta from going for the body press, and now the Dragon Pulse coming off takes off that final remaining 1 HP from the Smeargle, and Victor's Raging Bolt is left all alone to try and take on all 4 Pokemon on Mateo's side, and that is not going to be enough to take out this solely electric type Raging Bolt. And wow, Mateo's done it. He's found a way to come back from that fairly, one-sided game 2 for a moment there.
Yeah, it looked like it, but also now with the potentially faster Raging Bolt, seems like, well, this is over, and Mateo, as you said, finds the way back into this game. It looked like Victor was so far ahead. 3 Pokemon asleep at the same time for Mateo, but then Zamazenta was like, okay, I'm ready for battle. I took a little nap, but oh wait, isn't there a Calyrex switching into that slot? Well, let me body press that, and all of a sudden, it was all back for Mateo. And also, crucially there, I think, having the Terrestrialization still around for Raging Bolt, and he could use it defensively in that moment. Getting rid of the weakness to Dragon-type attacks allowed his Raging Bolt to take the incoming Dragon Pulse from Victor's side. And yeah, just like that, Mateo woke up from the long sleep, well, takes the second game and is just saying like, you know what? You might be a master of this mirror match, but actually I also know how to play this. Let me show you how I can come back into this, what looked like, yeah, a really devastating endgame.
Yeah, that Zamazenta was like, nah, I absolutely do not want to be asleep right now. I know my trainer is relying on me to wake up and get that attack off. And one thing I do like to notice is that the Zamazenta went for a body press. It could have been a read or it could not, but it was a very safe body press into the Smeargle. So regardless of whether or not, what slot it was, I think Mateo wanting to prioritize getting rid of that Smeargle slot because that Spore pressure was just so strong. And we saw at one point all 3 Pokemon asleep and just looked so dire, but then Mateo kept his cool, was able to play his way around that, and that masterful Raging Bolt switch in to absorb that powerful Thunderbolt well from the opposing Raging Bolt.
Yeah, the perfect turn there for Mateo. And yeah, just really have to wonder what would have happened had Victor not switched into the Calyrex and instead, yeah, tried to do something with a Smeargle. But of course, against two Pokemon that are already asleep, do you really want to keep Smeargle around? Well, you want to get your damage dealers into positioning, but yeah, just waking up on the spot was what Mateo needed there. But, well, that's all in the past. Now it's time to lock in for Game 3. And it seems like we're seeing some major adaptations from both sides.
Oh, it's the deciding game of the set. Rillaboom and Calyrex versus Zamazenta and Chi-Yu. There's a lot of different threats being on the field right now. That Rillaboom is quite heavily threatened by the Chi-Yu. But then there's... Oh, this is quite a dynamic turn.
Yeah, Chi-Yu threatening both Rillaboom and the Calyrex with either, well, Overheat, Heat Wave, Snarl, you name it. I mean, Chi-Yu is the most important Pokemon, I think, in this matchup for Mateo. Now deciding, okay, well, in the second game, I brought it in the back, so maybe that's what you will expect now, and instead then bringing it up in the lead. And yeah, this is definitely going to help Mateo quite a bit, especially because he can afford to maybe terrestrialize Chi-Yu in this matchup if he really wanted to. I guess at the same point, though, it's not really necessary now. And Victor goes for the fake out on the Terra Ghost. Always a risky play, but it pays off.
Yeah, Victor, you know, making that read and thinking, oh, you're not going to go for the Terra Ghost, and now allows such a powerful Life Orb boosted critical hit Astral Barrage onto this Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu is now in range of a Grassy Glide, and now it looks like the Behemoth Bash onto the Calyrex does quite substantial damage, but ooh, that Chi-Yu did not enjoy taking that critical hit there.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a risky turn there by Victor, but it really did pay off because now, as you were saying, with that critical hit, Chi-Yu in range of a Grassy Glide, and then Zamazenta, of course, also heavily threatened by this Life Orb Calyrex. So, yeah, Mateo will have to switch up his plan here. I'm not really sure how he can do it. I mean, you could hope that maybe there's no Grassy Glide, but it just seems so obvious, and it should be enough to get the knockout. And if Chi-Yu goes down, then things can fall apart really quickly for Mateo.
Looks like Zamazenta this turn is going to protect. So does Victor read this and go for the Grassy Glide? Yes, he does. He goes for the Grassy Glide, knocks out the Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu is down and allows the Calyrex to, of course, get an attack off. But the Zamazenta did protect. Did the Calyrex go for a nasty plot? No, it was just a regular Psychic. No, a nice move, but does mean that if Mateo brings in his own Calyrex, he could lock it into Encore with the Psychic.
Yeah. I think, though, that would be okay. Psychic should be enough to get the knockout onto Zamazenta from this range. And, yeah, there's nothing to switch in for Mateo into even the Psychic. So, yeah, he's debating. He's probably thinking about switching in Rillaboom. Yep, that's what we have here. But unlike the Chi-Yu earlier, this Calyrex over Victor's side is definitely not in range of a Grassy Glide. And so, well, you can try and go for a defensive play with the Zamazenta and maybe hit Wood Hammer into Calyrex to get rid of that Pokemon. But yeah, Victor still has two healthy Pokemon waiting in the back. And so, yeah, really kind of bad position here for Mateo after how the first couple of turns went.
Quite a dominant turn one as well. Could have gone the other way if Mateo had gone for that Terra Ghost and blocked the fake out onto his Chi-Yu. And now Mateo's in a bit of a sticky spot here with that Life Orb Calyrex exerting so much pressure on his entire team. Now the Rillaboom on Victor's side is going to be recalled, wanting to preserve maybe that grassy terrain and the fake out in the future. And the Incineroar comes out, just wanting to make sure to keep its teammates nice and safe against these two physical attackers on Mateo's side. And so the Grassy Glide is going to come off, not enough to get the knockout onto this Calyrex, and allows a powerful Psychic off onto the Zamazenta, and it is going to be enough to get the knockout. Zamazenta goes down, and Mateo is down to his final two Pokemon.
Yeah, and once again, Victor is kind of playing it safe, not risking anything there with Astral Barrage, because that could have hit into Wide Guard, instead saying, okay, well, I'm just going for the Psychic. It's going to get the knockout on Zamazenta. Also would do a little bit of chip damage to Calyrex if that switches in. But yeah, that's good enough for me right now. And yeah, it surely seems like it is good enough. Now, Calyrex over on Victor's side, though, heavily damaged. I mean, there's still a potential for a comeback here with the Calyrex if Mateo manages to maybe get a Grimnay boost somehow. And if he can call this turn correctly, I think he's going for a read here that Calyrex over on Victor's side will protect. And yeah, if that is the case, then maybe Mateo can still come back. I mean, you can never kind of call it out, or you can never say the game is over when there's still a full health Calyrex Shadow with a choice, with a Focus Sash.
Yeah, if there is one Pokemon that can pull a comeback, it is going to be a Calyrex Shadow Rider. Victor now actually not wanting to let his Calyrex stay on the field and take any potential damage, swaps in for the Smeargle. Meanwhile, Calyrex on Mateo's side is going to go for the Protect, and the U-turn now not very effective onto this Incineroar. Deals a little bit of chip damage. Incineroar, of course, that knockoff is not going to do very much onto the Calyrex either. And now we've got attack on the Smeargle, but the Smeargle has a fresh Fake Out ready to use on the Rillaboom, not to mention a Spore as well onto the Calyrex.
Yeah, and well, I said it earlier in the pre-game that usually you don't bring all 3 of your Fake-Out Pokemon. Well, it seems like Victor is like, well, actually, I can do it. But this puts a lot of pressure over on the Calyrex to do damage, and it's already severely damaged here. So, yeah, Mateo will need to try and maybe play around that somehow, but how does he get rid of Incineroar? I think the answer is just, there's just no way. Going for the Psychic is nice, but knockoff aimed at Calyrex will bring it down to 1 HP. And yeah, there's just no way past this Incineroar.
Yeah, this Incineroar is in such a strong position. Would you say it's the Fake Out triplets in this game? There's a lot of Fake Out.
Yeah, well, it surely seems like it. I don't think the Fake Out necessarily was what really decided this game, but yeah, definitely helped. And yeah,
oh my god, speed!
Yeah, especially this turn 1 play there, really going well there for Victor. Yeah, I think at this point it's just insult to injury because, well, the game is kind of locked already. Yeah, Calyrex cannot hit Incineroar, Rillaboom cannot touch Incineroar either, so even if this was like a 2v1, well, then maybe there's a way to come back in that spot, but yeah, Mateo trying to play things out, but a player of Victor's caliber, he's not gonna let this slip.
Yeah, this Rillaboom doesn't even have high horsepower to try and fish for a critical hit. Wide Guard, of course, just trying to keep Incineroar safe from any chip damage. The Wood Hammer, a very unnecessarily powerful attack to get the knockout onto Smeargle, but this gives Victor an opening to bring out another Pokemon in the back, and Victor's just in such a commanding position right now.
Yeah, just also making sure that there's no way this Incineroar gets knocked out by a couple of critical hits or anything, just going for the Wide Guard there to just secure the win here. Doesn't even need to go back into the Calyrex Shadow Rider because now it's all about denying the Calyrex over on Mateo's side any boosts. And so yeah, now with Grassy Glide being active again, Mateo is going to lock in the forfeit, and Victor did it. Takes game 3 and takes the set.
Congratulations to Victor Medina, showing to us time and again why he is one of the best players in this game. He's just so consistent, masterfully piloting his team and getting that damage control on his opponent and not really making...
See those mind games. And we can see the team that Fabian is going to be running here. Look at that Calyrex set. That's very interesting.
Oh,
that's
no Psychic.
Obviously, every single Calyrex Shadow Rider is going to run Astral Barrage. But yeah, Pollen Puff over Psychic. And that's surely got to be because of Brute Bonnet, because that's the main Pokemon that you'd want to be hitting. Granted, you get some healing as well. If you go for a Side Pollen Puff, that's great. But if you run Psychic, then Dark types completely wall you. Yeah. And Brute Bonnet specifically would be one-shot by Pollen Puff. Incineroar's going to be able to take it because it's Fire typing. But yeah, really cool set.
Yeah, really cool thing about Fabian is that he actually played at the Prague Regionals in 2018.
Oh, wow.
And he was in the top 4. So this is a bit of a run back to way back in the day. And
yeah, back in my day.
He's going to be trying to exceed that result from 2018 and maybe try and get that championship win.
Yeah, and just while we're seeing it as well, there's a couple of, like, I'd consider them strange move choices here. We got Iron Defense over White Guard on Zamazenta. We got Dragon Claw over Acrobatics on Roaring Moon. We never see Dragon Claw on Roaring Moon. It's always Breaking Swipe if it's the Dragon move. Yeah, and the Grimmsnarl as well. It's not screens for this one. It's going to be the much more supportive set in Fake Out, Thunderwave, and Taunt. That's a really cool... I think we call it the Fake Grimmsnarl. Although Fake Grimmsnarl usually runs Fake Tears and Fake Out.
Yeah.
So it's half a Fake Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, the nice thing about this Grimmsnarl is that because it's holding a Copper Cloak, it's unafraid of opposing Fake Outs. Now, of course, Leonardo doesn't actually have Fake Out on his team. He's got a Calyrex Shadow Rider, a Zamazenta, Chien-Pao, Dragonite, Raging Bolt, and Amoonguss. So Leonardo running a bit more of a standard set on his Pokemon there.
Yeah, these are Pokemon that we would have expected to see paired together and ran this way at this tournament because these have been shown to be very consistent. Able to get top 4 at the World Championships is no small feat, and this team was able to achieve that. And a lot of trainers have been backing it as well. We saw Simone Sambito recently on the stream was able to pilot that success. I wouldn't be surprised if Leonardo was part of that team building group, and even if he was not, he's been able to pick up the team to great success so far. Just one win away from that phase 2.
Yeah, Leonardo Zama Center does have wide guard, however, so Fabian's Calyrex is going to be a little bit warred by that because its other attack is Poland Puff, which is resisted by the steel typing on the Zama Zenta. And Fabian's Zama Center does not have wide guard, so Leonardo is quite free to start clicking those Astral Barrages because there's not much stopping it. Of course, Fabian does have double Dark types, and the Grimstar does have Thunder Wave, which, you know, could reduce the speed and possibly even get a full paralysis.
Yeah, that could be quite crucial against the mirror of the Shadow Rider and the Zamazenta, because if for Calyrex, they're Sash, they're going to be max speed. There's not really a debate there. But Zamazentas, do you run really bulky? Do you try and speed with opposing Zamazentas? That Thunder Wave actually might be incredibly crucial to be able to get that speed control in Fabian's favor.
And we are underway with a Chien-Pao and Zamazenta lead up against a Grimmsnarl and Zamazenta lead. So Grimmsnarl on the field now, able to start spreading those paralysis. Of course, against the Chien-Pao on the opposing side, which is a Dark type, is going to be unaffected by Prankster.
Yeah, and the thing that's going to set this apart from most of the mirrors that you have from Zamazenta is that iron defense on Fabian Zamazenta. We saw it get the Dauntless Shield first as well, so it's likely faster than Leonardo's, and then it's able to get that iron defense, and this is a Chien-Pao that doesn't have Sacred Sword. The Assault Vest set doesn't tend to have space for it. Granted, you can go for a Ruination instead and just not care about a potential +3 defense. That will be able to do half damage regardless of that, but I think this is already quite a nice position for Leonardo. The Grimmsnarl can go for whatever support it wants to, and that is surely going to be an iron defense coming out from the Zamazenta.
The Chien-Pao does not want to stay on the field and face off against the Zamazenta. The Calyrex is going to come back in, knowing that with no wide guard, the Zamazenta on Fabian's side isn't really going to have a great time. And now the Grimmsnarl is going to go for the fake out onto the Zamazenta, preventing it from going for a body press, and allows Fabian's Zamazenta to now be at +3 defenses. So this Zamazenta's body presses are going to be hitting incredibly hard.
Yeah, they might even be able to one-shot the Zamazenta. It'll be close. But now you've got to contend with the fact there's Encore available on the Calyrex, and if it gets Encored into Iron Defense, that's not going to be a good time for Fabian. But then that's what the Grimmsnarl's for. You've actually got 2 options to be able to stop that. Taunt would be able to stop the Encore for sure, but wouldn't get the speed control. Thunder Wave would be able to put the Calyrex slower than the Zamazenta, allowing it to move first, but of course does have that shaky accuracy. But I think the Thunder Wave still is preferable, because by stopping the potential Encore into the Iron Defense and also putting yourself faster, that's got to be preferred.
Yeah, the Encore is just so threatening from the Calyrex, and looks like actually Leonardo Zamazenta is going to forego that defense boost and swap in the Amoonguss, which is going to resist a super effective body press. Calyrex this turn is going to just try and scout out what this Grimmsnarl is going to do, and allows the Grimmsnarl's Thunder Wave to just whiff into that Protect. And now the Zamazenta with a +3 body press is not going to be very effective on the Amoonguss, but we see how powerful those defense boosts are, and deals nearly half damage to this Amoonguss.
Yeah, that was very impressive for a resisted hit, and something that could set this Zamazenta apart. We see wide guard over Iron Defense incredibly commonly in this format, but Iron Defense already has done some reasonable work here. The Amoonguss probably still out of range of another attack here, and is going to be able to redirect any of the support that the Grimmsnarl would want to go for. So if you go for Rage Powder, the Calyrex can't be Thunder Wave this turn. And granted, you can't Encore an Iron Defense anymore, but Encoring a Body Press means that the Calyrex is completely immune to the Zamazenta and can actually kind of ignore it as well. But you've also got the Taunt on the Grimmsnarl. Yes, you could Rage Powder this turn, but then you could Taunt the Amoonguss to be able to put a stop to all of its support shenanigans it can go for.
Yeah, looks like Zamazenta this turn just keeping itself safe with a nice Protect, and Grimmsnarl taunts the Calyrex, so no Rage Powders from this Amoonguss, and the Calyrex cannot use Encore after the taunt. It allows a super effective Sludge Bomb that actually deals very respectable damage to this Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, that was very reasonable. That's going to two-shot the Grimmsnarl, so nice Amoonguss going on the offense here, and Calyrex can't go for Encore anymore. Very nicely done. That could have been a Rage Powder to allow that Calyrex to go for whatever it wants to on that turn, but now it has been taunted, so it has to just go on the offense. The Amoonguss is still open to be taunted as well. That's probably why it went for the Sludge Bomb on that turn, because if it did get taunted, then Sludge Bomb is still going to be able to do something on that turn. And actually, the something was really impressive damage.
Yeah, I agree. That Sludge Bomb, Amoonguss not a Pokemon well known for being offensive, but here, because this Grimmsnarl did not set up light screens because it doesn't have light screen, it wasn't really able to, mitigate the damage from this Amoonguss, and now we're going to get our first Terastallization in this game. The Calyrex going for the Terra Ghost is going to be hitting with very, very hard with those Astral Barrages, but a responding Terastallization on Fabian's side onto his Zamazenta. So that's going to be the Terra Grass, which means it will no longer be affected by any Rage Powders or any Spores. So a really nice Terastallization there. The Taunt now coming off into the Amoonguss. So just, making sure doubly safe from those Rage Powders and those Spores.
Not even a Rage Powder, though, because the taunt went before the Amoonguss attacks here. And speaking of attacking, the Calyrex getting that Terra-boosted Astral Barrage, not enough to KO the Grimmsnarl here. And Zamazenta getting that Behemoth Bash into the Calyrex is not quite a two-hit KO either. And yeah, the Amoonguss not going for the Spore, going for the Sludge Bomb once again. Grimmsnarl is taken care of.
Yeah, Grimmsnarl has gone down, which means there's no more options for Thunder Wave. And Leonardo can breathe a sigh of relief that he's no longer going to be affected by paralysis. But of course, Fabian still has two very healthy Pokemon in the back that are ready to switch in. And he's got a Focus Sash Calyrex as well against two taunted Pokemon, which means they cannot protect themselves from this powerful Astral Barrage that could be incoming.
Yeah, I think what needs to be done here from Fabian, we're seeing him hover over the Calyrex instead of the Roaring Moon, which could go for Tailwinds, but what you can do here, because they are both taunted, is go for an Astral Barrage and also a Body Press into the Calyrex, because if the Calyrex stays in, it's taunted, it can't protect. Astral Barrage will KO it, Body Press will be directed. If he wants to save the Calyrex, then something switching in that will be one-shot by the Body Press, whether that's the Champao or the Zamazenta that won't get his Dauntless Shield defense boost anymore. That's got to be the way to cover for any option that Leonardo can go for. Amoonguss, it could also switch out and then get the Regenerator, and whatever switches in might not want to take a Body Press either. If it's a double switch from Leonardo, then you're still KOing at least one of the Pokemon with a Body Press, but this is quite a strong position for Fabian here. And I guess the only downside is if the Calyrex on Leonardo's side of the field wins the speed tie, is the Zamazenta in range of that attack? Because if Fabian wins the speed tie, that's huge for momentum.
Yeah, it looks really, really close here on whether or not which Calyrex is going to go first if Leonardo keeps his Calyrex in the field and it wins the speed tie and goes for an Astral Barrage. That is going to be super effective on Fabian's Calyrex. Going to bring down to its Focus Sash and knocks out the Zamazenta. And now Fabian is down to his final two Pokemon. He does get to respond with a super powerful Astral Barrage, which I believe from this range should be able to get the double knockout.
I don't know.
Maybe not on the Amoonguss.
Hasn't got any boosts, and it's only a Focus Sash one. The Life Orb one I'd have been really confident. I think this Amoonguss might be able to survive this attack.
Oh, we'll have to see now. First, the Astral Barrage comes off, and yes, you're right. Amoonguss does survive this attack, and because it's been taunted, it can't put the Calyrex to sleep, but it can just easily go for a Sludge Bomb and knock out that remaining 1 HP onto this Calyrex. So Calyrex gets a special attack boost, but just gets knocked out immediately in the same turn by the Sludge Bomb and forces Fabian down to his final Pokemon.
Yeah, and I don't think Roaring Moon's going to be able to cut it against a Zamazenta and a Champao with the Amoonguss still around to help it out. So that turn was the decider for sure. And to be fair, a lot of these games are decided between which Calyrex does move first. You always want to train it as fast as possible with Focus Sash. If Fabian's had moved first, Astral Barrage KOs the Calyrex. Body Press KOs the Amoonguss because it's taken Astral Barrage chip, and then surely the Zamazenta, with its +3 defense, is able to defeat the Champao and the Zamazenta even on its own at that point. And that was the decider. Because Leonardo's moved first, that KO'd the Zamazenta, not allowing the Body Press, and that is the forfeit coming out from Fabian. Leonardo takes game 1.
Yeah, Fabian recognizing that there's nothing much his Roaring Moon with only single targeting attacks can do in this game. But there is always a game 2, and Fabian is a very, very experienced trainer. And he's a player that can come back from maybe not quite as well game 1s. And we saw how fine of a margin that was. If his Calyrex had moved first, it could have been a completely different game 1 result.
Yeah, if it had got a Thunder Wave off at any point into the Calyrex, that would have helped. Taunting the Amoonguss didn't actually make any difference in the game because the Amoonguss only ever went for Sludge Bomb. So if the second taunt hadn't have gone into the Amoonguss, that could have been a turn that Thunder Wave did go into the Calyrex. And that would have been able to secure the game for Fabian, because at that point, there would have been nothing Leonardo could have done because the Calyrex is definitely slower. Astral Barrage Body Press clears the board. Zamazenta now wins against the Purdue in the back. So Yeah, maybe something that Fabian could consider going into this next game, because Leonardo didn't go for the Spore or the Rage Powder on the first turn that the Amoonguss could be taunted, or the second, and still just went on the offensive with the Sludge Bomb, so called it very, very nicely there.
I really like how we've said time and again this weekend, Brute Bonner is the offensive version of Amoonguss, but actually in that game...
Yeah, Amoonguss getting the Calyrex, right?
Did a lot. It was... dealt so much damage to the Grimmsnarl and actually got 2 KOs on both the Grimmsnarl and the Calyrex, and was actually used offensively in that game. And Leonardo used the pressure of those spores and the rage powders to then force the terrestrialization onto the Zamazenta, force the taunts, and all of these different moves that forced Fabian to try and deal with the spore that never actually ended up happening.
Yep, so wouldn't be surprised if Leonardo does go for a similar thing. I think the Grimmsnarl is very nice here. The set that Fabian has come to this tournament with should be very useful in this matchup. And the taunts didn't really come into play because the Encore would have whiffed into the Protect of the Zamazenta anyway, and the Amoonguss didn't go on the offensive, so Thunderwave is probably what I want to see coming out from this Grimmsnarl. We mentioned how important the speeds are, but if you put the opponent slower than you, then you'll be able to move first. Now, whoa, actually, there's a complete switch up here. We've still got the Grimmsnarl and the Zamazenta, but that's a Dragonite and a Calyrex on Leonardo's side of the field.
Yeah, Leonardo's Dragonite is inner focus, so it cannot be flinched by a fake out from this Grimmsnarl. And the Calyrex, being ghost typing, also is immune to flinching, so it really forces the Grimmsnarl to rely on its other support moves like a Spirit Break or a Thunder Wave.
Yeah, this could be a perfect opportunity to get the Thunder Wave off. You obviously can't go for a body press for massive damage on this turn into the immunity and the resistance. You could spend a turn getting an Iron Defense, but I don't think you particularly need to at this point. There's low kick on the Dragonite, I guess, and an Iron Defense would definitely help with that. But the Calyrex did seem to be a little bit of an issue for Leonardo, so get the Thunder Wave into that Calyrex, get the speed control going, and whatever the Dragonite wants to go for, we'll have to see on this turn, because there's no terrestrialization. It's not going to be an extreme speed. I wouldn't be surprised if it's low kick.
Yeah, the extreme speed comes off on the Grimmsnarl, deals fairly respectable damage. This is a choice banded Grimmsnarl. The Thunder Wave now, no, not very effective into the Calyrex because it went for the Protect, and actually a double up into this Calyrex. So fantastic turn 1 from Leonardo there, predicting that Fabian wants to really focus fire onto that Calyrex because it was so problematic in that previous game, and now Fabian's really not in a bit of a tricky spot here, I would say.
Yeah, that was good momentum there for Leonardo. Extreme Speed did fine damage, but it looks like it's going to be a 3-shot, and that could be quite crucial because the Extreme Speed will out-prioritize any of the Prankster shenanigans that Grimmsnarl can go for. You've got the Amoonguss switching in for Calyrex. That's surely just going to eat up that Thunder Wave from the Grimmsnarl, and you see there, one more Extreme Speed will do it into the Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, the Grimmsnarl getting the Thunder Wave onto this Amoonguss, not a very good Thunder Wave because Amoonguss is already the slowest Pokemon on the field. And a Behemoth Bash, that's going to be neutral damage into Amoonguss. Still respectable, but you don't really want to leave your Zamazenta on the field against a Flying type, a Poison type, and a Ghost type in the back. So, you know, I think Leonardo has done a great job of neutralizing that Zamazenta.
Oh yeah, for sure. The Grimmsnarl now in range with Extreme Speed as well. You can consider switching it out into the Calyrex, because then that would be able to soak up the Extreme Speed completely, and Zamazenta doesn't really care about Extreme Speed. However, if you do that, that allows the Amoonguss the chance to go for a Spore. So do you go for the Taunt into the Amoonguss to be able to definitely stop the Spore so that you can safely switch into the Calyrex afterwards, or do you just risk it? Because we've seen that Leonardo is perfectly willing to just Sludge Bomb after Sludge Bomb and then not go on for any kind of support.
Well, it looks like Leonardo recalls the Dragonite, wanting to switch up its moves there, and brings out his own Zamazenta on the field, which is going to get that +1 defense boost. And our first terrestrialization this game, it is going to be onto Fabian's Zamazenta, so wanting to keep itself nice and safe from getting put to sleep or having its attacks redirected away from the Rage Powder. And how can Fabian make use of this turn? So Grimmsnarl goes for the Taunt first onto this Amoonguss, making sure that the Amoonguss cannot be using its support moves in the future, while the Zamazenta now boosts itself up to +3 defenses, and the Grimmsnarl is going to be knocked out by the Sludge Bomb.
Yeah, this Amoonguss just going on the offensive, and granted it did get taunted there, so couldn't have gone for Spore or Sludge Bomb, but yeah, that's 3 knockouts this game, this set here for the Amoonguss, so that might be the most KOs any Pokemon's got so far. We don't tend to see that too often. The Iron Defense has been got on the Zamazenta on Fabian's side of the field. Now +3 is going to be able to threaten some really good damage, and we saw from the very first game on the turn 0 know that the Dauntless Shield activated on Fabian's side of the field first. And now that the Amoonguss is taunted, you should be able to just safely body press that Zamazenta. And we'll have to still wait and see if a +3 body press is able to KO the Zamazenta. I would expect it will if it's got that Astral Barrage helping it out.
Now, Leonardo doesn't want to take the risk and is going to go for his own terrestrialization on that Zamazenta. It is now a Terra Dragon, so it is no longer going to be weak to those fighting type moves. Calyrex going first with that Astral Barrage deals a lot of damage, but not quite enough to get the knockout on either Pokemon. Deals not that enough, but the body press is also not going to be enough and allows the heavy slam to get the critical hit onto this Calyrex and followed up with a Sludge Bomb. Zamazenta deals heavy damage, and now both of Fabian's Pokemon are really heavily chipped.
Yeah, and now you're in range of Astral Barrage for both of these Pokemon here. Yes, White Guard could be clicked. I'm just wondering if Pollen Puff is enough. Psychic would have been enough. And I would have previously said Pollen Puff surely is not enough, but I've already been impressed by a Pollen Puff Calyrex earlier in the stream, so I don't know. Like the Amoonguss would be. I don't know if the Zamazenta would be, because if you can get a KO with Pollen Puff, then you don't need to risk the White Guard being activated on the Zamazenta on Leonardo's side of the field. Obviously, if it doesn't click White Guard, Astral Barrage is just the correct play, but Pollen Puff here could be a very nice way for Fabian to get around that. And yes, there was no White Guard, and it is a Pollen Puff, but it's into the Zamazenta of his own.
Yeah, Fabian maybe identifying that Zamazenta is his best chance of success. Will brings his own Zamazenta back up to almost full health and allows the Zamazenta to knock out the opposing Zamazenta, but also means that the Amoonguss is paralyzed fully with that Thunder Wave. So that earlier Thunder Wave just paying absolute dividends that turn. It could have been a Sludge Bomb onto this Calyrex and knocking it out, but of course it got fully paralyzed and the Amoonguss really did not get to accomplish anything that turn.
No, that Sludge Bomb could have either knocked out the Calyrex or done very good damage to the opposing Zamazenta. Now, I don't think Dragonite's going to be that useful here. I think the only thing it could really do if Dragonite comes in is Aqua Jet the Calyrex. And that would be fine, because that would pick it off thanks to the critical hit Heavy Slam. But then what are you doing afterwards? Surely the Zamazenta would then just body press KO the Amoonguss, and then you're just like Aqua Jetting for the rest of the game, and that's surely not it. So therefore, it's surely got to be Calyrex coming in, if that's the case, right? And then we're back to exactly the same position as we were previously. We've got two Calyrexes facing each other. They'll almost certainly run as fast as possible. Who's going to move first?
Well, this is a very important deciding factor. Now, Zamazenta, of course, at full health, but it doesn't carry Wide Guard, so it's actually not able to block those Astral Barrages. So Fabian is really going to hope that his own Calyrex is able to win that speed tie and get that Astral Barrage off first. This is quite close between both of our players. If he can get his own Calyrex to move first, it's going to be quite difficult for Leonardo to try and get a comeback here.
Yes, I think especially with the Amoonguss being paralyzed, it's risky what it can do on this turn, whether it's going to be able to get off that attack. I don't know, do you just risk the speed tie? It's a bit awkward for both of these trainers, but it does seem like Fabian does have another option there, not having to risk the speed tie, because that is the Roaring Moon switch in. That is a very good switch into an Astral Barrage.
Yeah, Roaring Moon also with a Photosynthesis boost, which I'm guessing is going to be into speed, is going to be able to, yep, there is the speed boost, is going to be able to outspeed the Calyrex, and Amoonguss also not wanting to stay on the field, trying to get that Regenerator health boost back and allow the Dragonite to come in once again. Astral Barrage from this Calyrex is going to be resistant into the Roaring Moon, going to deal a little bit of chip damage onto this Zamazenta, and the body press now coming off onto the Dragonite deals quite a bit resisted onto that flying typing.
Yeah, that was very impressive damage. That's a 2-shot into the Dragonite. So yeah, the body press should be able to pick that off if that is what Fabian wants, but I think that is a very nice switch, not having to risk the speed tie on that turn, because if he lost it and attacked, then that's probably just immediately game over. However, by switching in this Roaring Moon, there's a couple of things you can now do. You can either go for Tailwinds to be able to put your Zamazenta and then your Calyrex in the future faster than Leonardo's side of the field. You could also just go on the offensive here. You've got Knockoff into the Calyrex, and you've got Dragon Claw, of all things, that we don't tend to see on Roaring Moon, that would also be able to KO the opposing Dragonites. So yeah, actually a really nice position for Fabian. I think it was a little bit dubious, and maybe it was just going to be a speed tie again, but that repositioning into the Roaring Moon here, very nicely done for him.
Yeah, Fabian not wanting to take any chances brings in his Roaring Moon. And now this Roaring Moon, actually both Pokemon on both sides are going to go for the Protect. So Zamazenta also wanting to keep itself safe. The Dragonite locks into extreme speed, not quite enough to get the knockout onto Roaring Moon, allows Roaring Moon to get the Tailwind off. And now, I would say the field is quite switched up. Fabian's really got the advantage here with that Tailwind off.
Yeah, that Tailwind is very, very important here, because you can break the Focus Sash on the Calyrex with a Behemoth Bash, and yes, the Extreme Speed can now pick off the Roaring Moon, but it's done what it needs to do. It's got the speed control on Fabian's side of the field, and now, when it's KO'd, I would assume that Extreme Speed is going to KO the Roaring Moon, you get the paid switch into the Calyrex, and now it's in Tailwind. It's going to be moving first, and it's immune to the Extreme Speed thanks to its Ghost typing. So as soon as that Focus Sash is broken on the Calyrex, so long as Fabian stays in Tailwind, Astral Barrage just wins the game.
Yeah, Fabian's got himself into a really nice position here, and now it's up to him to make full use of it. Dragonite chooses to stay in this game and knock out the Roaring Moon with an Extreme Speed, which allows Fabian's Zamazenta to go for an attack, which is going to be the Behemoth Bash, breaking that Focus Sash on Calyrex. And now Calyrex gets the Encore, so forces the Zamazenta into Behemoth Bash. And now Fabian has Tailwind. He's got a Calyrex at admittedly very low HP, but that's all you need against a Choice Band locked Dragonite.
Yeah, I still see a way that this is going to come down to the speed tie, though, because there's surely got to be a switch out from Leonardo here. Actually, either Pokemon is reasonable to switch out. You could switch out the Dragonite, sack the Amoonguss, and then get Aqua Jet pressure into the opposing Calyrex, or you could switch out the Calyrex, then Protect on the next turn, and now it is a speed tie once again. So I think that's probably the preferred option. Aqua Jet won't ever do it against the opposing Zamazenta, so maybe that is still what this game is going to come down to. Even though Fabian has been able to position himself very nicely in Tailwinds, no, it's going to be the Dragonite switch out. So it's got to be a Protect from the Calyrex. But now, if this Among Us gets KO'd on this turn, that could now be Aqua Jet once again into the Calyrex.
Yep, there we go. Calyrex going for the Protect to try and stall out one turn of Tailwind. Allows Fabian's Calyrex to get an Astral Barrage off. At this range, I would expect this Among Us to survive. And then the question is whether or not the Zamazenta went for the attack onto the Among Us slot. Among Us does manage to hang on in the red, but the Behemoth Bash follow-up knocks out the Among Us, which means Leonardo now gets that switch into his Dragonite, which is going to be able to lock into, as you mentioned, maybe an Aqua Jet.
Yeah, Aqua Jet can pick off that very low HP Calyrex. I don't know if it would have done it with without the critical hit on the Heavy Slam there. And that Calyrex, we've seen that's a very awkward amount of damage that Behemoth Bash did. Is it going to do exactly the same amount of damage if that is what has gone for here? Because, yeah, you've got to protect the Calyrex to be avoiding the Aqua Jet and Body Press KO the Dragonite. But now we're just in the position again. Tailwind's going to be gone. And we just have to do the speed tie again.
It's another 50-50 on which Calyrex is going to go first, but the Calyrex survives. That Behemoth Bash allows the Astral Barrage to come off.
In fact, no, it's not even a speed tie now, is it? It's going to be the Astral Barrage. It's just going to KO it, and then you just Aqua Jet.
Well, the Zamazenta does hang on. So, but the Tailwind's gone.
Yeah, but now you can Aqua Jet the Calyrex. That's it, because Aqua Jet goes into the Calyrex, and then just Psychic goes into the Zamazenta, so that is able to do it. I think I need to be Body Pressed into the Dragonite, but it's not, and that's now going to be the forfeit coming out from Fabian, and Leonardo is going to advance into Phase 2. Congratulations
to Leonardo Bonanomi. What a wonderfully played set. Just really taking advantage of his Pokemon. And even when his opponent managed to set up Tailwind, he was able to masterfully.
And the Bologna Special Championships top 128 wants to be able to go even further in this competition.
Yeah, and here's Giovanni's team. With respect, we've seen this before. There's no surprises. I guess Sharp Beak to boost the damage output onto an is.
That's a bit new.
Yeah, that's cool. This is all expected. I think we all expected this point. I'm just waiting to get onto the Giratina.
I do have a question for you, though. Something I haven't spotted. I mean, I'm still getting used to seeing Assault Vest on the Chi and Pal, but the ground terrestrialization, talk us through that.
Yeah, true. It tends to be Poison or Ghost at the World Championship. And I would assume that on most of these teams, you don't tend to often Terra the Chien-Pao. Ground would just be much better against Miraidon. So if you're going up against a Choice Scarf or Choice Specs Miraidon, just making yourself immune and taking Volt Switch or Electro Drift off the table either forces you into Draco Meteor, which starts to drop your special attack, or into Dazzling Gleam, which can be White Guarded by the Zamazenta. So Poison and Ghost make the most sense with Dark and Ice, just defensively, making yourself immune or at least resisting the fighting type attacks that would otherwise one-hit KO the Chien-Pao. ground wall to make you neutral. That's fine. You'll still survive.
That helps.
And then it will help against opposing Miraidon, which maybe the team does end up needing help with.
Well, I guess a Miraidon with the Hadron engine online is still too much for an Assault Vest necessarily. So having that ground typing can give you a lot of flexibility. Of course, the Zamazenta and the Calyrex, such a strong combination of restricted duos there. Interestingly enough, you've got the Encore on that Calyrex, something that Eduardo is going to have to bear in mind as we start picking away at this team. So the Giratina does indeed have the Shadow Sneak, but we've got the Poltergeist and the Draco Meteor on there.
Yeah, so it is going to be a mixed attacker for Giratina. It actually has the same attack and special attack base, so it's entirely reasonable to go for the mixed attack. That does mean you tend to go for a minus speed nature, and actually Giratina ends up pretty slow, so it's probably going to be moving second a lot of the time. But maybe it's not, because it's got access to the Shadow Snake to get that priority going. As mentioned, Sucker Punch and Extreme Speed can come out as extra priority, as well as Aqua Jet and Grassy Glide. We didn't even mention the obvious ones, because we see Urshifu and Rillaboom so often. I guess we're just used to that. But actually, 5 of those Pokemon out of the 6 have a priority move available to them.
Oh, so indeed being able to have that pressure in or outside of the speed control of your opponent could give Eduardo an advantage here. I like as well, you know, seeing on Giovanni's side that Zamazenta is running the Dragon Terrestrialization. That's something that the Draco Meteor and Giratina will be looking to try and get a land on. So something interesting to bear in mind.
Yeah, for sure. The Giratina, it should be really good in this match. Again, so long as the sash has been broken on the Calyrex, it beats both restricteds. That is a small caveat, but that should be achievable given the amount of priority that you have available. Sucker Punch will be able to bring it down to the Focus Sash. Urshifu outspeeds with a Choice Scarf and will be able to break the Focus Sash. Even just Grassy Glide, it won't be able to do much. Entei can't do it. It's immune. Extreme Speed won't be able to break that Focus Sash. But yeah, so long as the Giratina's positioned here, I think it's looking pretty good.
I mean, I like the look at this Entei as well with the Choice Band. That's something you really cannot underestimate. A Sacred Fire going into like a Mungus, for example, or the Chien-Pao, that is certainly going to be able to deal a huge amount of damage. But I'm not sure that Entei is going to be the best choice of Pokemon in this match. We'll have to find out, however. We're jumping straight into Swiss Round 8. Amoonguss, the beautiful shiny form with the purple, to match its counterpart here with the Calyrex, Shadow Rider on Giovanni's side against the Chien-Pao and Rillaboom of Eduardo.
Yeah, so no restricted Pokemon coming out in the lead for Eduardo. There is that Grassy Surge getting that grassy terrain. And now you do threaten a Grassy Glide and a Sucker Punch into the Calyrex to be able to pick up that knockout. The Grassy Glide can't be redirected, but Amoonguss can actually keep the Calyrex safe from the Chien-Pao at least. But it is still threatened by the massive Icicle Crash. Amoonguss tend to be run very physically bulky so they can survive that attack, and then it would be able to respond with the Spore into the opposing Chien-Pao. But this one is not the Assault Vest. It could go for the Protect if it did want. Maybe you can go for a Protect and a U-turn into the Amoonguss. That will get a tiny bit of chip to put it in range of Rash. If you expect the Amoonguss to go on the defensive or maybe supportive, you can Focus Fire on that Calyrex as well. So it's not going to be able to do the most amount of damage now. Even though the Chien-Pao's Focus Sash, it would still be able to resist that Astral Barrage. That might be why the Calyrex is repositioning here.
Yeah, and the Sucker Punch threat would have been formidable, so switching out the Calyrex keeps it nice and safe with its Focus Sash intact in the back. Zamazenta able to join the field, and the defensive play coming through from the Amoonguss, burning through this Fake Out and scouting out what Eduardo wants to go for here. The Icicle Crash was coming down into that Amoonguss, so nice that it was going for a Protect. Giovanni wanting to keep it in the game to disrupt a little bit later on as the Wood Hammer finds its mark on the Zamazenta, but that does negligible damage. I think a great ball position adjustment for Giovanni.
Yeah, that Wood Hammer would have surely put the Calyrex in range of a Grassy Glide afterwards, because the Sword of Ruin would have been active, and that surely brings it down either to its Focus Sash or in range of Grassy Glide for sure. And the Rillaboom is immune to Rage Powder, so that would have been basically a guaranteed pin into that Calyrex had it stayed in and gone for the Astral Barrage. And the Amoonguss kept itself safe on the first turn by protecting, and now it's keeping itself even safer by switching out.
Yep, jumping in and out of the battle here on Giovanni's side. The Chien-Pao is now going to join the fray, bringing its Sword of Ruin to the field here. Chien-Pao, however, is going to catch it with that Icicle Crash. Only does a little bit of damage, and with the Assault Vest, you don't have to worry about a Focus Sash being procced. But Rillaboom has to watch out for that Zamazenta. That does a huge amount of damage, and in retaliation, it's enraged. It's able to get the knockout on Chien-Pao. So Chien-Pao leaves the field as swiftly as it joined us, Jamie.
Yeah, and Chien-Pao's a really good counter to Giratina, and it's gone, just saying. So the Rillaboom is going to be KOing itself here, and does allow that switch in for Eduardo. With the assumption that he's got both restricteds in the back, then I think the Giratina could be pretty well positioned here. And because we've already seen all 4 Pokemon on Giovanni's side of the field. As mentioned, as soon as that sash is broken on the Calyrex, Giratina can be completely freed up.
And of course, Zamazenta doesn't have a lot of utility to hit the Giratina either. It can only attack it with that heavy slam. Body press not going to be doing any damage to a Ghost. Amoonguss is able to join the field all shiny and bright as the Zamazenta is revealed on Eduardo side. So we're seeing similar restrictors coming through here. Dawn the Shield's going to be able to boost up its defenses, but Amoonguss can always get up to a few spore tricks, let's say.
Yeah, and as mentioned, Icicle Crash, usually Amoonguss is trained to survive that. We still do have Terrestrialization available as well. If Amoonguss does want to keep itself safe from the Icicle Crash, a Terra Water is going to be very, very useful. It should be able to survive an Icicle Crash and a Body Press, even with the Sword of Ruin helping it. And then that's going to be able to do a little bit of chip damage to the opposing Zamazenta. It would free up the Zamazenta on Giovanni's side of the field to be able to go for its own Body Press. And into the Chien-Pao, it would be able to survive because it's Focus Sash, not the Assault Vest one, or into the opposing Zamazenta would also do fantastic damage.
Yeah, let's have a little look at where the sparkles are going to fly. It's going to be on that Amoonguss, just like you said, turning into a water type, going to give it a lot more flexibility against the ice type Icicle Crash, meaning that Amoonguss can apply pressure with those spores going forward and provide redirection with Rage Powder if required. Look how minimal that damage is. Poor Chien-Pao on Eduardo's side is not able to find its mark at all.
Oh, wow.
But Zamazenta is there to help out. The two of them doubling up into the Amoonguss means Giovanni's Terrestrialized Amoonguss goes straight back into its Pokeball here.
Yeah, really impressive damage. Sword of Ruin surely being the decider to be able to get that KO. And there's the heavy slam, at least, from the Zamazenta. That brings the Chien-Pao very comfortably down to its Focus Sash. Another crucial piece of information, Eduardo Zamazenta move first. And that is always important, which Zamazenta is going to be the speedier of the two. We can see the Zamazenta getting that recovery second on the grassy terrain, so extra confirmation that is likely to be the case. And now we got the Calyrex joining the field once again. Yes, the Sash is broken on the opposing Chien-Pao, so if you do go for an Astral Barrage, that would be able to pick up the KO. But then if you go for White Guard this turn, Calyrex cannot KO that Chien-Pao. And that could open up just that tiny opportunity to break that Focus Sash. And if the Giratina is waiting in the back like we want to see, then all it needs is the Sash broken on Calyrex. And it will 1v2 this Zamazenta and the Calyrex because it pins the Calyrex with Shadow Sneak. And then you can't really do the damage you need to with Heavy Slam. And that will probably be, I'm going to say, an 7-hit KO is what my assumption would be. And surely that's enough turns to get that Poltergeist damage going.
Yeah, the White Guard seems really a confident choice in Eduardo's side, and then allow the Chien-Pao to just try and get that Focus Sash broken on the Calyrex, like you said. Chien-Pao does exactly that. There's the Sucker Punch, takes it down to 1 HP remaining, but critically no White Guard came out here from that Zamazenta.
Yeah, not at all. It's just going on the offensive. Speaking of, there's the Astral Barrage from the Calyrex. That's going to be able to KO a very low HP Chien-Pao, and actually respectable damage to the Zamazenta.
Yeah, of course, Zamazenta could be following up here with a Steel-type attack into the Calyrex to be able to try and get the KO, and you know, it has got that Grim Nade boost. You want to try and get rid of it, but instead decides to target down his counterpart, goes for the opposing Zamazenta with the body press, and look at that, Jamie, they're ruffling, tuffling around. They can go for one body press, go for another, but critically Giovanni gets the KO. There's only one Pokemon remaining on Eduardo's side.
Oh, we know what we want to see, right? And this is the position that the Giratina can actually 1v2 two of the best restrictors in the format, and he is going to reveal that Giratina. I was so expecting the Entei just for a second, but yeah, there is the Giratina. The Sash is broken. Shadow Sneak will KO this Calyrex easily, and I would assume that Giratina is quite a heavy Pokemon, so it shouldn't be taking too much damage from Heavy Slam. It's got to be Shadow Sneak first. You always have to Shadow Sneak. That's why it was always going to be Protect from the Calyrex. But let's see how I would expect to be pitiful damage from this Heavy Slam will be.
Well, it will certainly start marking up how this endgame could look like.
Yeah, look at that.
Ooh,
that was a crit.
That was a crit. I mean, you're better at the maths than I am. That probably looks about like an eighth of damage, if that, because it was a crit. So guaranteeing that this Zamazenta has a huge amount of work to do. I think Giratina, as you said, just keeps clicking that Shadow Sneak. It's going to be able to get the knockout on that Calyrex with that priority, and then it's just going to have to give it a little bit of time to get through Zamazenta. But Giovanni's like, we've got no time for that. We're jumping into game 2. I want to try and even out the score in this set.
Yeah, look at that. Giratina was the decider and able to just... I was going to say wall out. It's not quite walling. It was pinning down, I would say, is probably the more reasonable say. Of the two
did anything.
It just existed.
Exactly.
And then there was a forfeit. So
that's how scary it is.
I know, right? Yeah. It's at, like... We always had to say, the Sash needs to be broken. And the Sash was broken. As soon as that happens, it frees up the Giratina. Because if, instead, the Calyrex still has its Focus Sash, well, yeah, Shadow Sneak will bring it down to the Focus Sash. Astral Barrage wins the game. but if you just break it, that's all that's necessary.
Well, I think we really have to credit the other Pokemon there as well. As much as we want to talk about the Giratina would not have had that success if the Focus Sash was still intact on that Calyrex. It would have been able to go for the Astral Barrage and get the knockout on Giratina in return. So kudos to Eduardo not only identifying that that was the path to victory to help set up success for that Giratina, but also secondly being able to actually execute it in the match.
Yeah, it was very nicely done for the rest of the team. I don't think that Eduardo really needs to switch anything up. It's up to Giovanni to make some adaptations here. Maybe the Amoonguss was still doing some pretty reasonable work. I think the fact that it was KO to body press, even as a water type, granted a little bit of chip from the Icicle Rash, that was very crucial. If the Amoonguss had survived through that turn, it would have got off a Spore. And that puts one of the opposing Pokemon to sleep, and wouldn't have allowed all the opportunities that Eduardo had to be able to free up his Giratina. And it looks like we're sticking at least for the same leads for Eduardo here, and it's going to be the Chien-Pao and the Zamazenta coming out for Giovanni.
Yep, Chien-Pao a piece, but a few little changes up here. Once again, it's that Rillaboom front and center for Eduardo, and we've got Zamazenta's defense boost coming up thanks to its Dauntless Shield.
Yeah, and we're going to be able to get fake out pressure going straight away, and that Chien-Pao, it's got the Assault Vest, it can't protect from that, and we don't have Sacred Sword, unfortunately, on the Chien-Pao on Eduardo's side of the field, because if you did, then that's a pretty easy fake out and Sacred Sword the opposing Chien-Pao, but it's slightly more awkward here. It does have Ruination, even though it's the Focus Sash variant, and we don't tend to see Ruination as much on Focus Sash. It's almost exclusively on Assault Vest. That is what the Chien-Pao on Eduardo's side of the field has opted for, so you could pretty comfortably go for the fake out into the Zamazenta, for example, and get a Ruination off if you did want to. And then the Chien-Pao, it might be able to go for something like an Icy Wind to get the Chien-Pao slower than the Zamazenta. I don't think there's too much stopping the Icy Wind coming out here, because if you fake out the Chien-Pao, which is happening, that's opening up your Chien-Pao to go down to its Focus Sash.
Well, there comes the Ruination, and that's going to come through into Zamazenta. As you say, we don't see it too often, but it's really helpful to deal with a lot of these bulky or boosted Pokemon. Zamazenta, however, free to retaliate with that heavy slam. Thankfully, though, for Chien-Pao, there's a Focus Sash in its back pocket that's going to keep it in the game.
Yeah, and now we're down to maybe Sucker Punch range. It gets a tiny bit of recovery from Grassy Terrain, but that still should be in range of Sucker Punch. Now, Assault Vest Chien-Pao aren't always run max speed. It is entirely reasonable for them to run max speed, but it is much more common that the Sash version will be. So Sucker Punching the Chien-Pao on Eduardo's side of the field, that is still risky, because if you Sucker Punch with the Chien-Pao on Eduardo's, trying to get around the Sucker Punch, that might force it to fail. So it's still a little bit of an awkward position. Getting the 50% damage onto the Zamazenta is going to be incredibly useful for the Pokemon waiting in the back, because you're not really going to be able to deal with it that quickly with the Chien-Pao and the Rillaboom.
It's not just end games you have Sucker Punch mind games in, you can have it at the beginning of a match as well, and that's exactly the situation these Chien-Paos might indeed find themselves in. It looks like, however, the Chien-Pao on Eduardo's side is like, I'm not playing this game, so I'm getting in the back. Let's bring forward the Zamazenta instead. So Zamazenta is going to be able to apply or see a lot of pressure with those body presses into both the Zamazenta and the Chien-Pao on Giovanni's side. Rillaboom follows up with that Grassy Glide, not going to be nearly enough to get the KO on the Chien-Pao, as Chien-Pao actually goes for this Icy Wind. This is going to critically bring down the speed of the Zamazenta and the Rillaboom, and if I remember correctly, Eduardo's Zamazenta was the faster in game one, so this could be critical to give the Zamazenta on Giovanni's side an advantage.
Yeah, and Body Press we saw previously did about that much damage.
It does so much.
And therefore it's able to pick up the KO on that Rillaboom thanks to the Icy Wind chip that did happen as well. So really nicely done here for Giovanni. That's got to be a huge momentum swing for him. Taking care of the Rillaboom pretty handily. Here comes the Giratina though, and it's a lot earlier in this game, so it's got to be able to do a lot more work for Eduardo now. The Chien-Pao is still pretty healthy. It's definitely out of range of Shadow Sneak, so surely it's able to get off an Ice Spinner into that Giratina, and that will do very respectable damage. It should still be a two-shot, even though Assault Vest don't tend to run too much attack into their Chien-Pao. And now that you've got the Icy Wind into the opposing Zamazenta, you can very easily go for the body press with the Zamazenta as well. Maybe you consider going for a Ruination and a body press into the Zamazenta, because that would allow that combination to be able to pick up the KO.
I was going to say Chien-Pao looks in a really good position to apply pressure to that Giratina, whether you wanted to go for ice or dark type attacks, but instead it's going to switch out. We're seeing the beautiful little Amoonguss back in play. Giratina does have the utility to go for something like Protect if it was worried about that priority Sucker Punch coming through, but it looks like, first of all, it's going to turn into a Fire type. Terrestrialization takes to the stage. It's dropping its weaknesses it had with Ghost and Dragon typing, and now will become a fully fledged Fire type. The Protect actually comes down on Giovanni's Zamazenta here, so no offensive plays from Giovanni's side of the field this time. Instead, Amoonguss is going to have to take the body press. It takes it reasonably well, respectively even and can retaliate with that Rocky Helmet a little bit. Giratina goes for the Draco Meteor, but finds a Protect, so its special attack is going to stay intact.
Yeah, maybe expecting Terrestrialization to come out on Giovanni's side of the field into that Dragon typing, because a combination of Poltergeist and Body Press is very likely to be able to pick up the Zamazenta, but keeping itself safe with the Protect. Now it can keep itself safe with the Amoonguss helping it out if it does go for the Rage Powder. That took the Body Press very comfortably, but another Body Press in combination with a Poltergeist should be able to pick up the knockout on that opposing Amoonguss, because it has already taken a reasonable amount of chip here. And now that the Giratina's gone for its Terrestrialization, it's no longer immune to the Body Press coming out from the Zamazenta. So actually, it's completely opened itself up. I appreciate the fire type in the front of the Chien-Pao, but now we haven't even got the Chien-Pao on the field. That fire Terrestrialization might come back to bite him.
We'll have to see if that in-game situation is going to play out. The Body Press does come down into the Zamazenta. It could indeed hit the Giratina now because it has dropped its Ghost typing, but the Zamazenta is going to keep tussling around. Two dogs on the field here, going for one Body Press, going for another, and Giratina goes for the Draco Meteor, but it cannot find its mark. That's second time in a row it's able to hit the Protect. Giratina might be looking fabulous on the field, but it's certainly not getting any work done.
Yeah, but this time it should be able to get over Draco Meteor pretty comfortably into the Amoonguss. I don't think that will be enough to pick up the KO, because you have to split your training between offense on the attacking side and the special attacking side, because you are a mixed attacker on Giratina, so surely that is not able to pick up the Amoonguss. We're used to Draco Meteors from Miraidons picking up an Amoonguss. Giratina's going to be a little bit weaker, so probably won't be able to get that KO.
Well, now the Zamazenta on Eduardo's side going for that Protect. It's going for the defensive player. Zamazenta was going for the Body Press into it once again. Looks like the Giratina is being left neglected by the Zamazenta, and it can finally go for that Draco Meteor. It does find its mark on the Amoonguss, but as you said, not going to be able to get the KO. Does put Amoonguss in a precarious situation, but really, Amoonguss, you needed to get gone, because now it can go for the Spore. Giratina going to have to take a nap in this game too.
Yeah, and now it's still not going to be able to threaten the Poltergeists that it would now have to switch to, given it's got -2 in its special attack. That is one of the nice combinations with the mixed attacker. Yes, you drop your special attack with Draco Meteor, and most Pokemon that go for that are fully special and then do loads less damage. But now Giratina can switch up to Poltergeist, but it's going to have to wait to do that because it is now asleep. The Amoonguss should be out of range of Body Press based on the previous amount of damage, and it especially will be after it's got this Regenerator.
Exactly, Amoonguss can leave the field, heal up a lot of HP, and then come right back in later on. Chien-Pao able to come in, bring that Sword of Ruin into the field, and that's going to help with these Body Presses as well. Zamazenta on Eduardo's side, once again, going for the Protect, playing the game against its counterpart on the opposing side, but Zamazenta on Giovanni's side not able to find its mark. I was really sure it might go into the Giratina this turn, but instead fails, goes into the Protect as Giratina continues to take a nap.
Yeah, even though nothing was achieved that turn in terms of damage, that was still, I think, the correct play for Giovanni, and switching in the Chien-Pao allowed the Sword of Ruin to be able to tip that KO over the edge. I think that would have been potentially necessary to get that KO, and because of the icy winds that happened quite a few turns ago at this point, the Zamazenta was outspeeding and would have been able to get that KO. But there's the first turn wake from the Giratina.
And it's going for the priority Shadow Sneak, going to find its mark on Zamazenta, but Zamazenta's bulky, it's able to hang on. Chien-Pao is going to go for this Ruination into the Giratina, does do a huge chunk of damage, 50% locked in against it, as the Zamazenta can finally get the knockout on its counterpart there, is able to fell it with another Body Press, helped out by that Sword of Ruin, like you mentioned, Jamie.
Yeah, now we've got a Chien-Pao that was brought down to its Focus Sash, waiting in the back, and that's all that's left for Eduardo here. The HP is really dwindling on Eduardo's side of the field. The Zamazenta on Giovanni's side, based on the previous damage, is actually in range of Shadow Sneak, so that is a potential option to go for. We said about Sucker Punch being awkward between the Chien-Paos, but yeah, the Chien-Pao on Eduardo's side of the field is KO'd to the Sucker Punch from Giovanni's.
Yeah, clean knockout there from Giovanni's side. Now you just have to contend with this Giratina. The Body Press finds its mark. That's a knockout. That is a game apiece. We're going to a game 3 here in Swiss Round 8.
Yeah, poor Giratina there. It just existed in Game 1 and was able to take the victory, and while trying to achieve some things, did not do so well in that game. As mentioned, the Fire Terrestrialization opened up the fact it could be Body Pressed. So I guess the Chien-Pao did come back on the field, and you would have still been able to Ice Spin it if it didn't turn into the Fire type and stayed as a Dragon type, but it just didn't really do what it needs to there. We've seen the difference between the Draco Meteor from a Giratina and what can happen if it's Draco Meteor from something like a Miraidon. Yeah. Miraidon just one-shots Amoonguss with a Choice Specs Draco Meteor. That one did, what, 60%?
Yeah,
so it's reasonable,
it did a respectable amount, but it's not enough when that Pokemon has the capability to go for Spore.
Yeah.
And also the Regenerator is able to help keep it in play. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we saw Giovanni's fourth and final Pokemon in play, did we?
I don't think so. You would assume it's the Calyrex. It's very likely to be the Calyrex.
But again, I think that's a thorn in the Giratina's side here, because Giratina came out a little bit earlier. It then was in a position where it was joining the field before Calyrex had its Focus Sash broken, so even if it was able to find a way out of that endgame situation, if Giovanni just reveals that Calyrex, it spells disaster for the Giratina.
Yeah, you need to be able to position so that the Giratina... The way the Giratina tends to work, because it's a really bulky Pokemon, and it's respectably offensive when it's holding that Brisius Orb, but it's more the fact that its typing, its ability to keep it safe from ground-type attacks, and just its general bulk is able to just win because of its typing. That tends to be what Giratina does, and we saw that in the game 1. It came on the field, it didn't actually do any damage, and the game was over because of its typing. Well, it's going to have to perform a lot better in this game 3 here.
Well, certainly is for its trainer, because this is the winning in for Phase 2. Both these trainers have X and 2 records. The winner will advance to Phase 2. The loser will be knocked out of the competition. Giovanni and Eduardo bringing the Zamazenta, and it looks like it's a Chi and Power piece as well. I see a mirror on my hands here, Jamie.
Yeah, I think I do give the advantage to potentially the Chien-Pao with the Icy Winds, just because that will allow that speed control to happen. But at the same time, if the Chien-Pao is just KO to a body press and the Chien-Pao on the Eduardo's side of the field protects itself, that keeps its Focus Sash safe. And there's the only thing that you can keep the Chien-Pao safe on a Giovanni's side of the field would be to switch out, but then you don't get the Icy Wind. And we've seen that the Zamazenta is almost certainly faster now. And yeah, there's no switch outs, and that is the protection of Chien-Pao. This could easily be a body press KO into the Chien-Pao on Giovanni's side.
Well, the Zamazenta is protecting on Giovanni's side. Whether or not the Zamazenta on Eduardo's side will KO the Chien-Pao is yet to be determined. The Icy Wind is the move choice that is coming through. Chien-Pao on Eduardo's side, as you said, Jamie, going to keep its Focus Sash safe, going to keep its speed intact. Zamazenta is going to have the drop, but it's obviously in a position where it can still go for the damage, and something like a body...
And again, that's one of the better answers to the Giratina that is waiting in the back. Yes, Calyrex is also a very good answer, so long as the Focus Sash is intact, but it might need to come onto the field pretty quickly, because we've seen Amoonguss coming on the field in the previous game, was KO'd even with the Terastallization to Icicle Crash and Body Press. So if you bring in the Amoonguss, you can maybe protect it for one turn, but then it gets KO'd. So I think, yeah, it did kind of have to be the Calyrex here, but by bringing the Calyrex way too early here, as mentioned, as soon as the Sash gets broken, which is very easy to do from either Sucker Punch from the Chien-Pao or the Behemoth Bash from the Zamazenta, that frees up the Giratina completely. That is still, we would assume, waiting very comfortably in the back.
I love the pressure that Eduardo has exerted early doors in this game, forcing this Calyrex to have to come out, just like you said. Amoonguss isn't going to get the job done, but then making the Calyrex vulnerable, that could really set up success. And I love the way these trainers are thinking turns in advance, trying to make sure they lock up the chess pieces required.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the Calyrex is going for here. If it goes for Protect to try and preserve the Focus Sash, then it's just really not achieving anything. And the Zamazenta on Giovanni's side of the field will have to do all of the offensive pressure here. There is that Terastallization coming out, though. It's going to be coming from the Zamazenta, turning into the Dragon typing. That's obviously going to reduce the damage from a Body Press that could be coming out. And it should be able to survive through the turn pretty comfortably because of that.
Well, Encore will come through. That's going to, lock the opposing Chien-Pao into Protect, I believe it was. So it's not going to be able to go for any offensive moves on this turn. But of course, Zamazenta is free to still break that Focus Sash on the opposing side. Of course, Body Press will come through first of all, thanks to that Icy Wind drop. But I think going for that Dragon Terastallization meant that it keeps Zamazenta in the game. We can easily take another one of those. And actually, critically, Jamie, it didn't go for the Calyrex, maybe thinking, hey, it could easily Protect on this turn. Let's get damage on the Zamazenta first.
Yeah, and that Zamazenta is now going to be in range of another Body Press. Is that still going to be prioritized? Because the Zamazenta, now it's taken a reasonable amount of damage thanks to that Body Press. That's going to be in range of Astral Barrage and Body Press, I think. It might be quite close because of how bulky Zamazenta is, but that should be able to get the KO. And if that's going to be the case, well, now do you have to consider going for the White Guard with the Zamazenta and a switch out, because then you stop the Astral Barrage and you should be able to very comfortably survive the Body Press.
That's true. I mean, Chien-Pao is not doing anything on the field at the moment. I really hope there's a White Guard coming through, because if this Astral Barrage does come through without the White Guard and that Giratina comes in, that's going to spell disaster. But Giovanni first going to click that Terastallization button. It's actually going to be becoming a fully fledged Ghost type. That means there's extra damage being banked into the Astral Barrage if it is able to come across the field. But White Guard is going to stop it in its tracks. Giovanni kind of has his head in his hands here, thinking that these are some really difficult turns, because Calyrex was going for the Astral Barrage. It has been stopped. Giratina is able to get in so safely here.
Yeah, and that can be a responding body press as well, but that's not going to be enough to KO the Zamazenta. It needed the Astro Barrage, and it was even into the Chien-Pao. So the Giratina gets in completely for free here. And now the sash isn't broken, but so long as you click Wide Guard again, it can't be Astro Barrage. It can break the Focus Sash itself and then deal with it in the future. There's just going to be just 2 Shadow Sneaks into the opposing Calyrex for the KO.
That's the thing, Giratina can get the job done all by itself, while Zamazenta provides that support with the Wide Guard. Zamazenta can also be dealt with on Giovanni's side by the Zamazenta on Eduardo's side a little bit later on. I really think that Dragon Terrestrialization was so critical.
Yeah, it really, really paid off here. Allowing that Zamazenta to survive, being able to go for those Wide Guards, going for more Wide Guards potentially, and you probably want to go for even more because of the Terrestrialization coming out on the Calyrex, because the Astro Barrages will be doing even extra damage. It's likely to be a Psychic now coming out because you want to avoid the Astro Barrages. Yeah, Zamazenta, it's sacrificing its defense boost here to switch into that Amoonguss.
I kind of like this, no, the Amoonguss coming in. It's a Pokemon that we can see put this Giratina to sleep. It's a way to slow down the pace of play and keep the Calyrex safe. Calyrex wants to keep its Focus Sash as intact as it can. It's going for the Protect. The Wide Guard comes through, of course, defensively. Giratina goes for the Poltergeist, but to no avail because of that Protect in play. So now in this next turn, if Giovanni can keep the Calyrex safe, maybe switch it out for the Zamazenta, or even, you know, you have to risk. Maybe the Focus Sash will be broken, but at what cost? Could Amoonguss get the Spore off on that Giratina and put it to sleep?
Yeah, I think this is a very crucial turn, because if you go for Wide Guard with the Zamazenta, yes, you keep the Giratina safe for 1 turn, but it's almost certainly going to sleep from a Spore afterwards, and then it won't be able to Wide Guard after. That is what's happening here. So it's going to be able to keep the Giratina safe for 1 more turn if Astro Barrage would click, which it was.
Okay, so you're stopping the unnecessary damage coming through on your Giratina, but at the same time, on Giovanni's side, you're opening up your Calyrex to take a huge amount of damage from the opposing Giratina here. It is going to be going for that Poltergeist, but no.
Oh, it did. Oh, it psyched me out.
Yeah, well, it goes down into that Focus Sash. It's going to be pulling it around Calyrex, doing a lot of damage, but critically, the Focus Sash still actually activates, so it stays in play. Calyrex is hanging on as Amoonguss goes for the Spore, but it goes into the opposing Zamazenta here.
Yeah, it's going to be able to stop the Wide Guards now. That was the sacrifice that Eduardo went for, but now you can Rage Powder. You've got the Zamazenta safe. It was the position that Giovanni was going for. Get the Wide Guard off the field for at least the next couple of turns at least, because now the Zamazenta, it's guaranteed to sleep. You can very safely go for Rage Powder here and Astro Barrage. There's nothing stopping that. Shadow Sneak would be redirected into the Amoonguss, do a tiny bit of chip damage, and probably actually do more to itself from the Rocky Helmet. And Giratina is a very bulky Pokemon. I think it would have lived just a regular old Astro Barrage. With the Terra helping it, I think that pushes it into a KO. So now it is a very, very awkward position, and that is exactly why we're seeing that Giratina Protect here.
Not to mention, if the Calyrex is able to get a KO on this opposing Zamazenta while it's sleeping, it's going to get the Grim-Nade boost, and then it's going to spell disaster for the Giratina. Amoonguss seems to be the thorn in its side. It's going for that redirection. We know the Protect has come through on Giratina, not wanting to fall victim to having its Shadow Sneak redirected, as the Zamazenta is going to have to take this boosted Astral Barrage. The Terrestrialization giving it a little bit of extra edge. Not enough to be able to get the KO, though, so possibly in this next turn, the Zamazenta could still wake up.
That's surely what Eduardo has to go for now. If the Zamazenta would have been KO'd, yes, you get a Grim-Nade boost on the Calyrex, but at least you get a switch into something that could start to deal with the Amoonguss' support and maybe get the Calyrex as well. But yeah, now it's surely just got to come down to, does the Zamazenta wake up, get the Wide Guard off, or maybe not so this turn. The Giratina didn't want to risk it. It's switching out, keeping itself safe just for now.
I mean, Zamazenta could still wake up, go for that Wide Guard, and allow Rillaboom to switch in safely. The 4th and final Pokemon on Eduardo's side. Yes, you can't go for a fake out into the Ghost, but the priority Grassy Glide could be nice.
Oh, no, wake up.
Could be a nice way to shut down the Amoonguss, but Zamazenta still taking a nap. No Wide Guard. Calyrex free to go for an Astral Barrage. We know that this is guaranteed to get the knockout onto the Zamazenta. This will give it 1 Grim-Nade boost. Rillaboom taking just over 40%, I would say. My maths is, great. Onto that Rillaboom. But critically, that Grim-Nade boost is coming up, so when the Giratina inevitably does rejoin the field, that is going to mean that these Astral Barrages are going to be so formidable.
Yeah, but Sludge Bomb was the cover for Rillaboom. Very, very nicely done there. Because now, what would have happened if that Sludge Bomb hadn't have happened is Grassy Glide just KOs the Calyrex, ignores the Rage Powder. So actually really nice reposition for Eduardo. But because that was Sludge Bomb, that meant that the Rillaboom is now in range of Sludge Bomb again. Well, 1 more Sludge Bomb will do it. So do you protect the Calyrex and go for Sludge Bomb into the opposing Rillaboom? But then if that's going to happen, well, here's a Chien-Pao that can go for the Icicle Crash. Terrestrialization is no longer an option on this Amoonguss. It can't turn into a Water type. But as mentioned as well, Amoonguss is very commonly trained to survive Icicle Crash. So if that is the case and it makes it through the turn, maybe the Calyrex protects from the Grassy Glide that can come out. But maybe you predict the Calyrex to go for Protect and go for the Grassy Glide and Icicle Crash in these Amoonguss just to get that tiny little bit of extra chip that would put it into KO range. I think, as far as I can see, whether Amoonguss is going to be KO'd to Icicle Crash or not on this turn, I think that might be what it comes down to here. Calyrex not going on the offensive here, and Eduardo seems very, very happy about that switch.
There are so many variables in play. Icicle Crash also having the chance to potentially flinch that Amoonguss as well, not allow it to go for the Sludge Bomb. But hey, you don't have to rely on Icicle Crash when a Fake Out comes down into that slot. Rocky
what a call!
Oh, it is the Icicle Crash. It comes down into the Amoonguss. That is a knockout. The double up of the Fake Out and the Icicle Crash is enough to fell the little mushroom from play.
Yeah, and Eduardo's done it. It doesn't matter what's on the field right now. The sash is broken. Giratina wins. Even though it's not on the field at the moment, it might not even be on the field when we finish this game. But Giratina just wins this endgame. Fantastic call from Eduardo. As I said, you need a tiny bit of extra chip into that Amoonguss. Fake Out does chip, and that put it in range of the Icicle Crash. That could have been an Astral Barrage coming out from the Calyrex, but switching out, sacrificing its Grenade boost. What a call coming out from Eduardo. I don't think there's anything that can be done now. You have to beat this Rillaboom and Chien-Pao. You have to sacrifice some resources to be able to get that. It doesn't matter. Giratina wins by existing.
I mean, you can see Giovanni locking in that forfeit. He knows the writing's on the wall. Giratina too much here. And so Eduardo is going to be the victor here and win the winning in.
With a Giratina, and I will say that again, he won the winning in with a Giratina Origin. Giratina Origin is in Phase 2 here at Prague.
And it wasn't
in the air, but now it's time to make some new stories, to make some new memories, and Mark is going to try and stop Victor from this undefeated run today. And it is a Rocky Helmet on Volcarona, no Electric Seed. And let's have a little bit more of a look. Okay, Iron Head there on Dragonite, not that commonly used. We have Ice Shard on Chien-Pao, no Sucker Punch. That might play a role in this matchup. And then it is a Choice Scarf on the Miraidon. So, yeah, a couple of Pokemon where I'm like, okay, this could be interesting. I mean, Terra Dark also on Volcarona. That could play a role against the Calyrex Shadow Rider.
Yeah, it seems like the Volcarona is very defensive. You have, you know, the Rage Powder for your direction. You have Struggle Bug to lower the special attack of opposing Pokemon. And the Flamethrower there just for a little bit of coverage. You can use your same type attack bonus. And the Rocky Helmet as well, going to be dealing that additional damage if contact is made, as well as the additional threat of maybe that Flame Body.
Absolutely. A Flame Body is something that Victor has to kind of play around and think about it. Do you want to go for an attack, even though Volcarona could be switching in? But eventually, thanks to the Rage Powder, you will have to attack into Volcarona to knock it out. So I wouldn't be surprised if kind of the plan for Mark in this matchup was to be, okay, I have my Zamazenta and my Miraidon as my two restricted Pokemon, and then I choose Volcarona and one more Pokemon that I feel like has the best matchup into what I'm expecting from my opponent. So this could be Chien-Pao maybe, just because, yeah, well, you get some priority, and yeah, you can take attacks from the Calyrex pretty nicely, but it could also be the Dragonite, because if you can force out the Terra from Calyrex, then, of course, with the Extreme Speed, you can Terra Normal, avoid any damage from Astro Barrage, and then also at the same time deal a lot of damage back with Extreme Speed. And also, interestingly enough, sometimes there are positioning where you can go for low kick, which would also hit the Zamazenta for a lot of damage.
I think as well, the Dragonite on Mark's side, having that Aqua Jet, a trend we're starting to see move into these priority attacks so that you can hit those ghost types and break potential focus sashes and things like that, does give it that little bit of extra flexibility into Pokemon like the Calyrex pre-terrestrialization, or even the Smeargle post-terrestrialization if it is going to turn into that ghost type.
Absolutely. And yeah, Victor's team, we've talked about it before, but it is that protect the Calyrex team. 1 Fake Out, 2 Fake Out, 3 Fake Out, triple Fake Out, Incineroar, Smeargle, and Rillaboom. And Victor knows how to protect Calyrex best, and he also knows his matchup. So I'm pretty sure that Victor has a little bit of an idea. So even though this is a little bit of an unconventional team coming out from Mark, I'm pretty sure that Victor has had a look at this, especially also knowing that this matchup was going to be likely as the only other undefeated player. So I'm pretty sure both players looked at this before. And yeah, I think Victor could try and maybe use Raging Bolt. That's one of those Pokemon that can do well in matchups like these because, well, you get the electric terrain in case you need to switch in and out. Well, it's a little bit of an extra boost that you can use on your on your Raging Bolt. But let's see, it's Smeargle and Calyrex first against both Restricteds, Miraidon and the Zamazenta.
Victor trusting in the Smeargle to be the first Pokemon to partner up with that Calyrex Shadow Rider and give it support against both the Restricteds on Mark Mullender's side. The Zamazenta and the Miraidon front and center. Electric Train on the field. Defense coming up on Zamazenta's side.
And already a big decision here for Mark on turn 1 because his Miraidon is Choice Scarf. So which move do you want to log into? Do you want to try and play a Wide Guard Mind Game potentially to avoid any damage from Astro Barrage? Fake Out is active for the Smeargle. A lot is going on, but if you give Victor just one turn where he can move freely, then it's also an opportunity potentially to go for a Nasty Plot, and you can't really afford that. So yeah, maybe you need to cover up on the Calyrex. Electric Terrain is up, so Smeargle not as threatening with the Spores. So I think it's going to be all eyes on Calyrex this turn for Mark.
I think as well, if you can slow that Miraidon down with the Fake Out, Zamazenta isn't really threatening that Calyrex at all. It can only hit it with that heavy slam. And so Calyrex, as you say, could be in the prime position to get that Nasty Plot off. The Fake Out does indeed go down into the Miraidon, the only Pokemon that can really threaten this Calyrex, but no Nasty Plot to be seen. It's going to capitalize on this window of opportunity and go straight for the Astral Barrage, get some significant damage on both of the Restricteds on Mark's side. Calyrex obviously taking some recoil from that Life Orb, followed up by this heavy slam, but Calyrex still staying in the game. Smeargle's Moody Boost, however, the speed boost coming up, lowering the attack, it doesn't worry about that. But as you said, the terrain is in play. You can't really go for those speedy spores.
Yeah, well, you could switch Calyrex into Rillaboom if you have it in the back and then go for a Spore that way. However, that is a very, very passive positioning, and then you would allow your opponent to take a couple of turns to wake up maybe. So another play that I would see for Victor is actually you could go for a Follow Me with a Smeargle and then Terra Dark on the Calyrex, just to make sure that even if it's a Snarl coming out from Miraidon, because Miraidon flinched turn 1, so didn't actually get to move, so now can choose another move. You can go for a Snarl, and yeah, we've seen a similar situation before, but the Follow Me and Terra Dark on Calyrex actually kind of nullifies this, this turn. Well, you would still get the special attack debuff, but the damage could be incredibly high anyway.
Yeah, no Terrestrialization, but another way to bypass that Snarl is with a Wide Guard. Miraidon was indeed locking in for that attack, but Terrestrialization does not be utilized because Wide Guard is going to completely block that.
And that is such a big opportunity now for Victor. If this is Astro Barrage, this could be a double knockout.
It's going to come through hard and heavy into both of the restricted Pokemon. It's a double KO. Victor Medina is able to get 2 Grimnate boosts right out of the blocks here on that Calyrex.
Yeah, what a big, big turn for Victor, identifying that, okay, this is one of those, okay, I know that you know kind of situations. So Mark there going for the Snarl, maybe expecting the Terra Dark, but yeah, no Follow Me. Instead, it is the Wide Guard, and what a great play there by Victor, putting him so far ahead in this first game.
I mean, this is exactly why Victor has this Smeargle with Wide Guard on. When I spoke to him earlier, he said, I need to protect my Calyrex. It's a fantastic way to stop these spread-type damage moves coming into play. Fantastic defensive support, fantastic offensive pressure.
Absolutely. And now with Shenpao and Dragonite, though, you have the option to go for some priority moves. However, you didn't even force out the Terrestrialization yet on Calyrex, so it is not even susceptible to extreme speed. And yeah, if it's a Follow Me by Smeargle, then Calyrex is kind of safe here and can go for another hit. But of course, Dragonite with the Terra Normal could try and avoid any incoming damage from Astro Barrage.
That's true. The Terrestrialization could work defensively in Dragonite's favor. Even if you don't, go for the Dragonite with the extreme speed here, I think the Chien-Pao has the capability to get that damage on the Calyrex. The Follow Me comes through, however, it's going to try and draw in all of those priority attacks and keep this Calyrex safe once again. Ice Shard comes through.
Yeah, but I think you can just go for the Psychic, and this is exactly what Victor does. At +2, this is going to be plenty enough to knock out Dragonite. You don't even need to play those mind games. And this is what I love about Victor's playstyle. He's not the type of player that kind of opts into those, oh, there's like 2 options. Which one are you going to do? Which one am I going to do? No, he always tries to find that third option that allows him to progress his board state continuously. And this is exactly what he managed to do here. Going for one kind of read or one play where he went for the Wide Guard, but it worked out perfectly. And so he's going to win this game without even revealing his 2 final Pokemon. Wow.
I mean, what a commanding duo of the Calyrex and the Smeargle. I think Mark now does need to utilize the remaining moments in this Game 1 and start thinking about Game 2 and what adaptations you were going to make. I mean, how are you going to get through Smeargle and Calyrex?
Yeah, and it's, I mean, coming down to the first turn, that it went really, really well for Victor. But yeah, there's no kind of safe option for Mark because, of course, the pressure is there. Nasty Plot on Calyrex could have been used on turn 1, so you have to do something about that. And you can't just go for the wide guard that easily. So now Mark just, stalling out the remaining turns just a little bit to have a little bit of extra time probably to think about what he wants to do for game 2.
Yep, Smeargle just once again going for that follow me in case an Ice Shard was coming through into the Calyrex. Astral Barrage, of course, not going to be connecting thanks to the Protect. And I wouldn't be surprised, Marcus, in the next turn to just see a repeat of this coming through. Follow me, Astral Barrage, just trying to get that damage through.
Yeah, and eventually also the electric terrain would run out, so then maybe you can start going for some spores. But I mean, both players know that this game is effectively over. If Mark can get a KO on Smeargle, then maybe you can see a little bit more information of what is in the back. But then, I don't know if you can really do much with that because the team of Victor is also so flexible. He could do the same thing for game 2, but also he could just switch things up completely.
And he's not even able to fell that Smeargle from play. The Astral Barrage will come through. This, of course, is going to take Chien-Pao down to its Focus Sash, so you still need one more turn for Menta to come through. But seeing the Ice Shard damage, unless there's going to be some stat changes on the Smeargle, I feel like it could even take another one.
Yeah, probably. Or it could just go for like some spores. Yeah, I mean, at this point, the game is effectively over. Well, there is the defense drop. Maybe now Ice Shard is going to be enough. So Mark at least
just to get a KO on the board, right?
But I think Mark's team, it has the options to do something about this. It's not like, you just put Smeargle and Calyrex there and the game is over. Well, it was enough for the knockout. Nice job there, Chien-Pao. But because Smeargle and Calyrex offer so many different ways of how it can be played, Victor in this game just went for the one that Mark didn't kind of cover with the plays he was making. And so, I think it's one of those where you're like, oh, okay, I lost this one, but I kind of, I know the turns that maybe didn't go my way, but it wasn't because I made any like big mistakes, but it was just because my opponent made some better calls here.
Yes, and we've seen this before as well. Sometimes in a best-of-3 set, that first game can go kind of to a landslide victory to one trainer, but they don't necessarily end up winning the set because a lot of the information gained, a lot of the, calculations may be run internally by these trainers in those moments can now be applied to the rest of the games in the set. So Mark could very well now have identified how Victor wants to play this, make those reads and adjustments, and then start playing Victor at his own game.
Absolutely. So, Mark, surprisingly to me, not bringing Volcarona at all, but maybe he's saying, well, against this kind of Calyrex-centric approach that I'm expecting from my opponent, Volcarona doesn't actually do that much. I mean, I could try and go for some struggle bug, but other than that, I mean, there's nothing really to redirect with Rage Powder if it's Astral Barrage that your opponent is using. And also against the Smeargle with Wide Guard, Victor has some ways to play around the Volcarona. So even though that is often a Pokemon that comes into this matchup, because of the lack of Quiver Dance, maybe Mark saying like, okay, actually Volcarona, I already know that I don't have to try this. Or maybe he's now thinking, okay, well, game 1 didn't go my way, but now I need to try something else. Then maybe Volcarona is the first thing that you could kind of look at.
And I think Victor as well has so many support options to help that Calyrex out. Game 1, obviously working with the Smeargle was a fantastic success, but you could always bench that Smeargle, bring in something like the Incineroar into this next game to be able to still provide that exact same support with the Fake Out, but maybe some more offensive capabilities as well.
Yeah, and then on Victor's side, do you really need to switch anything up? I mean, I don't really think so. Smeargle and Calyrex are just, strong enough to take on Mark's team. I think Rillaboom in the back is always a great kind of threat as well.
With the terrain, I think, is important.
Exactly, exactly. So that is something that you probably also want to bring. But you could switch up the order if you wanted to.
Well, it looks like Smeargle is not coming out to play right away. We've got this Incineroar and we've got the Calyrex by side. Opposing, once again, both the restricted here on Mark's side of the field.
So once again, it's a little bit of a fake-out mind game. Victor could go ahead and go for the fake-out. Now, Mark could go for the Wide Guard, which would move before the fake-out. But then if it is fake-out into Miraidon and Nasty Plot, then things could get really nasty for Mark. So you kind of want to go on the offensive, I feel like. And Wide Guard, but in the first game, Victor perfectly understanding the pressure that he was kind of applying there and then going for the attack anyway, despite the fact that Wide Guard could have been an option. By going for this Incineroar, maybe this could be one of those triple fake-out situations once more with potentially Rillaboom and Smeargle in the back, or maybe it's just Rillaboom and Zamazenta. That's
a good thing, actually. Is there another fake-out user in the back? Who would it be, and how would that calculate into these next couple of turns? How are they going to keep rotating to support this Calyrex?
Importantly, though, there's no follow-me threat this time around. So let's see there. if this is fake out into Miraidon, this could be really good for Victor.
Yeah, Mark taking a leaf out of Victor's book here and going for the wide guard, stopping an Astral Barrage from doing a huge amount of damage. But if this is a nasty plot, which it is, Calyrex,
get out of here.
It's not falling for any of Zamazenta's tricks. It goes for that nasty plot, gets +2 special attack. It didn't need the Grenade boost it got in the previous game. This Calyrex is unstoppable, Marcus.
Yeah, incredible play there by Victor. Once again, understanding perfectly what was going through his opponent's head. Mark there thinking, okay, well, after how game 1 went, it's kind of obvious that I go for the white guard, but you know, it would also be a little bit risky for Victor to just go for the nasty part because I could body press, knock out Incineroar, and then where does the game go from there? But no, Victor then perfectly reading into this. And I guess, I'm pretty sure though, even if Mark went for the body press, Victor had a plan for that scenario as well.
Yeah. He has so much flexibility and has looked at all the moves and counter moves, and in this particular turn, called it so commandingly correct right here in this game 2. Mark now has to find a way through these Astral Barrages.
And now, one of the downsides of going for White Guard on turn 1 is the fact that you can probably not go for a Protect here, because the move could fail, and then Victor's Calyrex with a Life Orb N+2 is usually trained to knock out Zamazenta with a Psychic.
Interestingly enough, the Calyrex on the opposing side goes here for the Protect, plays nice and defensively, and maybe wants to look what this Miraidon is going to lock into as well with its Choice Scarf. Looks like it was going to be, obviously, that Electro Drift falling down into the Protect as Zamazenta follows up with a Body Press. That does get a one-hit KO onto the opposing Incineroar, however, but knowing Victor, there's going to be another fake-out Pokemon in the back.
Yeah, I feel like this is going all according to plan, because now you have confirmation, okay, Miraidon is locked into the Electro Drift. It has committed its Terra Electric, so now here's my Smeargle, another fake-out. And now, once again, we can play this game where, okay, Miraidon cannot protect, so I could go for a Fake Out and Psychic, knock out Miraidon guaranteed, and only if there is a Dark type waiting in the back. That is one way for Mark to maybe get out of this.
That's a good point, actually. A Pokemon like the Chien-Pao that you can see sneakily on your screen would not be taking any damage from the Psychic type. It also is not going to appreciate taking, you know, the Ghost type damage, but at +2, it's still going to be formidable.
However, now I'm thinking for Victor, maybe this is one of those positions where actually you go for the Astral Barrage, even though there is the White Guard threat. But if you go for a Fake Out into Miraidon and Astral Barrage, there's not really any big downside that I'm seeing. So maybe that's also an option for Victor.
Yeah, exactly. You might fall victim to the Wide Guard, but then you can kind of still position things up on the next turn with some redirection. No Wide Guard to contend with, though. Zamazenta just going straight up for the Protect. A nice defensive play as Smeargle goes for that Fake Out into Chien-Pao. That is going to be breaking the Focus Sash, critically leaving it vulnerable and exposed to the follow-up that can come through on Victor's side.
Yeah, it was Psychic going into Protect there, so small victory for Mark, I would say. But now, how do you get out of this? I mean, Smeargle there is ready to support Calyrex with a Follow Me in this next turn. And then Zamazenta just used Protect. So Psychic into it seems so safe to get a KO. The Dark type in Chien-Pao is now already on the field, so there's nothing really on Mark's team that can switch into this move.
Well, Smeargle just going to go straight for a switch here. You know, Calyrex can always go for that Protect as well, play defensively, but Zamazenta's just going to come straight in here as well. Both restricted on Victor's side in play. Defense has come up on Zamazenta's side as Calyrex does indeed play defensively.
Oh, wow. Okay, not going for the opportunity here to launch a Psychic into Zamazenta. Instead, repositioning a little bit further, maybe trying to take the advantage to another level. And it's Icicle Crash into Zamazenta. Of course, that's not going to take too much damage. But yeah, allows Victor to bring in Zamazenta as well, and now you're probably threatening like 2 KOs at the same time with Psychic and Body Press.
I like this switch though as well, bringing in the Zamazenta to take that Icicle Crash, really, really nice, but critically you're preserving your Smeargle in the back. I feel like there was a position maybe where Zamazenta could have gone for the Body Press after an Ice Shard already breaking that Focus Sash, and then Smeargle would have been already gone from play. So you still have that utility in the back to support Calyrex later on.
Yeah, I think Victor wanted to preserve Smeargle for the Miraidon later on, because with the Choice Scarf, of course, it will outpace Calyrex, and it doesn't really matter how many special attack boosts it has. But now, is this a spot where you can go for the Psychic and Body Press from Victor's side, making it very, very difficult to deal with that?
Let's have a look. Terrestrialization is going to take to the stage here in Swiss round 9, and it is going to be on that Calyrex. It's going to be dropping its Psychic and Ghost typing, becoming a Dark type here. That's going to give it a lot more defensive capabilities, particularly in the face of a Chien-Pao.
Yeah, Chien-Pao going for the Protect, wants to stay safe, but is this a Psychic going into Zamazenta? Yes, it is. And
there we go.
Can it get the knockout?
Let's see how much damage it does. Not enough to get the KO, holding on with 11 hit points remaining. So Zamazenta is free to retaliate with a Body Press into its counterpart on the opposing side of the field. But Zamazenta, oh, actually was going into the Protect there.
Okay, so Mark Zamazenta taking this attack, that requires some huge investment. But yeah, it didn't go for the body press into Calyrex, which I kind of feel like maybe it kind of had to go for, like going for taking the risk there. But yeah, Zamazenta dropping really low there for both trainers. But I think this is maybe benefiting Victor because he can still play towards this endgame where with Smeargle and Calyrex, he can go for like a follow me and Astro Barrage. And as soon as Zamazenta is down for Mark, then there's no more Wide Guard. And I think, yeah, this is the kind of the spot that he is playing towards now. But for Mark, it's kind of tough. You would want to position Zamazenta next to Miraidon, but I don't really know how you would get there easily.
And the thing is, if you go for your Wide Guard, then you're not dealing any damage. The Zamazenta on Victor's side could get the KO on your Zamazenta, then no more Wide Guard.
Okay, maybe actually Mark found a way. Switching in Volcarona into the Astro Barrage and protecting Zamazenta. Oh, okay, going for the Wide Guard. Interesting. Now let's see if Zamazenta, though, can make it through this turn.
Yeah, let's see what Victor has locked in here. Calyrex was going for the Astral Barrage, so the Wide Guard is going to block that coming through. A sigh of relief coming through from Mark here that call has been made correct. But what is the Zamazenta on Victor Medina's side going to go for? Is it going to try and get the KO? Instead, it goes for the body press onto that Volcarona that has switched in. Of course, not very effective. Is going to take that damage from the Rocky Helmet, but no burn coming through.
Okay, now I guess you kind of take it to another 50-50 between Wide Guard and Astro Barrage because we saw Zamazenta over on Mark's side is faster. So you could go for a body press and follow me if you expect the Psychic, or you could go for the Wide Guard and attack with Volcarona if you expect the Astro Barrage. Yeah, it's still kind of dicey. I'm not sure how much I like this positioning for Mark, but it's very, very risky. But, well, he has played himself into a spot where now he has a chance. A big turn. Victor could try and play defensively, protecting his Calyrex, but then that could run into Zamazenta just going on the offense. So let's see.
Well, it's to Wide Guard or not to Wide Guard. Let's see what the Zamazenta goes for. No Wide Guard. Calyrex goes for the Astral Barrage. This will not find his Mark and Volcarona, but will be able to deal with the Zamazenta on Mark's side. So that restricted Pokemon is going to go down. Mark loses that Pokemon. It doesn't really matter what the Zamazenta on Victor's side is going to do there to protect there, but it feels like this Calyrex has now got a Nulla boost that's at +3. It's so relentless at the moment. If Miraidon comes back in, however, there is no fake out on the field for Victor. That Calyrex is not going to be as safe.
Yes, yeah, that's what you have to do now. Bring in Miraidon, you threaten the KO with Electro Drift. You're just resetting the electric terrain at the right time and the right turn. But, of course, Victor can let Zamazenta go down and then have Smeargle, and then there would be Fake Out and Follow Me pressure. So with Zamazenta now out of the picture for Mark, no more Wide Guard. And yeah, I feel like the lack of Tailwind on this Volcarona, the lack of Quiver Dance or anything, but he cannot really capitalize on this positioning. He has all the damage. He's pressuring with Miraidon, but Volcarona cannot really use a free turn right now. So yeah, I'm afraid it's going to be a protect here from Victor's Calyrex to take it safe. And then, well, you kind of... I wonder, do you even... Well, Zamazenta is going to knock itself out there
with the Rocky Helmet
as well. So ideally, you would want Zamazenta to stay around. So I'm almost wondering, do you go for a protect here with Volcarona?
Well, let's see. Zamazenta actually gets out of there saying, I need to hang around a little bit longer. I don't want to go down. And we're going to see that Smeargle come back into play.
Yeah, and Victor was trying to counter the play that I was talking about, going for the switch, but Mark kind of read through this and went for the Flamethrower instead onto the Zamazenta, which is now the Smeargle. This could have been really, really bad for Mark had Zamazenta just stayed in. But now at least the Focus Sash is broken on Smeargle.
Yeah, Smeargle has his Focus Sash broken, takes it right down into the red zone. We're going to just see the Moody Boosters come through. Don't think they're going to be too impactful at this point in time. However, Fake Out critically is now on the field.
Yeah, but now, well, it seems like an easy Fake Out and Astro Barrage. But of course, Mark can counteract this by switching Miraidon into Chien-Pao and then protecting Volcarona, for example. Or do you try and let Volcarona go down so you can set up a Chien-Pao and Miraidon board? Well, I don't know my damage calculations, to be honest. How much damage can the Astro Barrage do from Calyrex? It's so boosted up. +3.
Yeah.
And it has the Life Orb. Maybe this is enough. Yeah, this should knock out the Chien-Pao, actually. So then, yeah, if it does knock out, then you have to protect.
I know being a Dark type, it normally gives it a bit of breathing room against a Ghost type, but this is that incredible Calyrex +3. It's still going to be a difficult battle for this Chien-Pao, but if it is able to hang on, that does indeed keep Mark in the game.
Yeah, let's see though. Volcarona protects, so now Mark wants this Chien-Pao to go down, kind of. It's still not guaranteedly great for him, but If Chenpao makes it, then it would be pretty bad, because then Astro Barrage can get the double KO next turn, probably. Let's see, though.
Yeah, let's have a look. Astral Barrage does come through, will find its mark on that Chien Pao, and it is enough to secure the knockout, particularly with a little bit of extra chip help from the fake out.
Yeah, I think that's a trade that both players are fine with. But now we're really entering the final stages of the second battle here in Swiss round number 9. Miraidon has to come in and has to make a decision. Are you going for a Snarl? Are you going for an Electro Drift? I feel like at this point you probably have to go for the electric move, but then, yeah, maybe it's just Follow Me and Astro Barrage from Victor's Calyrex. It has so many boosts and should be able to knock out Miraidon and Volcarona with Astro Barrage from this range.
Yeah, that's true. You can just go for that Follow Me straight away. If you worry about the Snarl, I mean, you're already at +4. Calyrex is Terrestrialized, is not taking super effective damage, and oh, it'll be at +3. It still makes it incredibly formidable.
Yeah, +4 on the Calyrex.
Yeah.
Aren't there checking again, like running the numbers in his head. He's like, oh, well, yeah, actually, Volcarona can't take this, Miraidon can't take this. So, yeah, is there really any way for me to do anything? Well, we talked about this before. Volcarona, no Quiver Dance, no Tailwind, no way to increase its speed. So Calyrex will be fast enough. And it's just going to be a Follow Me and Astro Barrage. And then that should be the game.
Let's have a little look. If these duos, the Smeargle and the Calyrex Shadow Rider, can pull it through for Victor Medina, the core that won him that game 1 is now sitting here pretty in game 2. Electro Drift comes through first of all. That is going to get the knockout on the Smeargle with a critical hit, just for a little bit of redemption from the Pokemon that has been really pesky the whole way through this set. But now all eyes do come down onto this Calyrex. The Astral Barrage is unleashed. No threat of Wide Guard. It can find its mark on both Pokemon. That is a double knockout. Mark goes down. Victor Medina is able to take this Swiss round set, remain undefeated here at the Prague Regional Championships. What a game, Marcus. What a game.
Yeah, what a game, what a set, what an incredible performance by Victor Medina throughout this entire tournament so far. Going undefeated, 9-0, the only remaining player that is left. Both players there analyzing the games a little bit. And yeah, I think once more it comes down to those wide guard calls, and